Okay, guys, gotta get sworn in. Separate.
So, yeah, so Terry, go ahead and I'll stand here. I think Preston's gonna take some pictures.
Yeah. Come on in, guys. Hi. Welcome aboard. Congratulations.
All right, so yes, I'm gonna ask you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Colorado, and faithfully perform the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations. And I'm going to give you, this is what.
Big love fest like this. It's gonna feel so
Oh, yeah, that's right. You didn't take it for the person.
He took some pictures.
Yeah, I'll send you some photos there. That work?
Ryan Keel was making.
Group photo was great.
Can we do it in front of the photo over there?
If you'd like, yep.
Watch the board.
Why don't we ever elect tall people on this stuff?
That's why you're here.
That's your token.
One, two, three.
Come on, Terry.
Yeah, when Preston's done there.
One more on your phone with you in there too. Yeah. And maybe.
Oh, sorry.
No, you guys stay there for 1 second. I'd like to get one with Preston. Maybe and Deb is there also. Hang on. Please. Thank you very much. Am I the only one doing this?
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All righty then. Everybody needs to, is this on, Ben? It's on. I think when I took over the court.
There it goes.
There we go.
Can everybody hear us?
Yep.
Maybe turn it up just a little bit. Testing, that's good. All right, welcome aboard, everybody. I would like to call the regular town council meeting of Wednesday, April 13, 2022, call to order. And thank you all for coming. Thank you to all you guys for stepping up and looking forward to a great next year with you all. So we've got the oath of office out of the way. We need a roll call, please, Pam.
Council members Ennis.
Here.
Gramley.
Here.
Lakin. Here. Schuyler.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Here. Great. Next up, is additions and or deletions to the agenda. Is there anything you want to add or delete?
Nothing to add, but Mayor, I do want to note that the agenda was updated and reposted early yesterday afternoon to reflect the addition of an executive session at the tail end of tonight's meeting. The closed session is pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-4024B, and it's for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding the paving of Lena Street and the implementation agreement with Lena Commons LLC. No motion or vote is needed for that. Just wanted to call attention to it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Preston, did we need to throw something in, or is that just in the committee review where we're going to talk about the letter for Ridgway Valley water users?
Yeah, committee reports if you'd like
Committee
to.
reports, okay. Consent.
All right. Next up, for everyone, but for the newcomers, there's always a section of the agenda that's called the consent calendar. And these are items that staff has deemed to not require individual discussion and vote. And we can approve all 6 of these things. There's a different number of them every month in one motion. Saves us some time. But I always say when I get to this item that if there's anything anybody has seen in the packet that's in the consent calendar that they want to pull out and discuss separately, we'll do that. So does anybody see anything on the consent calendar they want to deal with separately?
I just want to make a separate note on item number 4, continuing solar incentive program. This is something that's only every couple of years. So we don't see this all the time. So this one kind of stands out a little bit different, but it's a tax incentive that we have, so.
It's an incentive to do solar energy too, which is great. And I agree, it only comes up to us every couple of years, but I think it's an excellent program. So thank you, Russ.
That being said, I move we approve the consent calendar.
Second. Thank you. Motion been seconded. Preston, I forget, now that we're back in person, do we need a roll call vote for everyone?
No, everyone's in person, so we don't have to do roll call.
But you do for the consent,
Oh, okay.
always. Yeah,
Okay.
it's the one item that,
We do.
anytime you do anything financially related.
We have to do roll call. Okay, roll call vote, please. Thanks for the reminder.
Councilmember Enix. Aye. Grambling.
Aye.
Lakin.
Aye.
Skylar.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer.
Aye.
Just again, for the newcomers, if you're not aware, as mayor, I only get to vote if there's a tie. So that's why she can call my name. Okay, that takes us to public comments. Public comment section of the agenda is an opportunity for anyone to address council for anything that's not otherwise on the agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to talk to us about? Tom?
Tom McKinney, Ridgway, Colorado. 3 points I'd like to make. Number 1, and the very most important, is I want to thank the entire council, not just the new councilors, but everybody for spending their time helping us. Thank you. That's number 1. Number 2, I would like you to consider at some early point meeting either on the agenda as an agenda item or a workshop to talk about, think about priorities of this council. That's number 2. Number 3 is in terms of priorities and issues to be resolved. I'd like the council to really delve into seeing about getting a town planner. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. Yep, totally on board with all of that. And thank you for recognizing that everybody up here is not exactly donating their time. We get a small stipend, but it is a big thing that we all put our time into this effort. So thank you for that. Anyone else? Is anybody on Zoom? Everybody? Okay, good. That takes us to public requests and presentations. Item number 7, Pam, we are introducing.
Right, I'm really excited to introduce you all to our new administrative assistant, Deborah Hines. We call her Deb. And Deb's been hired to be an assistant to both myself and to the town manager. Deb worked for the town as the deputy clerk, deputy treasurer in 2007 and 2008. And she served on the council, on this council for 2 years before she went to the city of Uray. And she became the deputy clerk and treasurer there, and then became the city clerk and city treasurer for the city of Uray. So she was there for 6 years. Then she came back to town. She's been at land title for the last 5 years. And we're just really happy to have her back on our team.
And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
No, I'll just add my thanks. Obviously worked with you previously, and it's just really great to have you back aboard.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that.
All right.
It's good to be back.
Cool. All right, that takes us to public requests and presentations. Item number 8 is a request to use the right of way on south end of Palomino Trail at 8 a.m. on June 4th for the rat race. Is anybody on Zoom to address this, or the staff covering it?
I think this, Pam, you're covering this item, right?
Yes, I am. Really easy. The rat race this year is on June 4th. And at 8 a.m., they just want to use a small piece of Palomino Trail. They're going to go from the lodge down Palomino to the county road. So really, probably not going to have anybody even on the road when they're out there. And then they're just going to go down the county road and go out from that way to go up to the rat
County
trails.
Road 12.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
we just need council approval because they'll be out of town right away.
great. Somebody have any questions for Pam or staff in general about this?
I do have a quick question. I'm all for it, but I saw in the application that part of the road was going to be closed for a couple of minutes. Is that actually necessary, or is it just use of the right of way?
Good question. Maybe they're just saying that, I don't know.
Well, it says
I
here,
don't-
not to exceed 200.
It said they were starting as a group, so my guess is they're going to use the width of the roadway for literally 2 minutes to
Yeah, for
ride
a couple
from
minutes.
the lodge to, yeah.
And I think at 8 o'clock in the morning, I really don't think there's a problem. But
Why?
if you want, I can talk to the marshal about it.
No, like I said, I'm totally fine. I just saw that noted on the application and thought I'd just.
I was assuming the marshal would be aware of it.
Oh, yeah.
Would be doing whatever needed, just in terms of being there to make sure there's no conflict.
I mean, I figured he was gonna be parked at that south end of Palomino Trail for the couple of minutes that it was gonna take, but yeah.
And it's just Palomino Trail, correct, that's closing?
Right.
Oh, cool, right on.
Not even the whole thing.
Within the town's jurisdiction.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, so anytime there's an application to use any public right of way, so that'd be a street, a sidewalk, the alleys, we have an event that goes to the alleys. Those things all have to be approved by council.
Anybody in the audience have questions about this item? Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the special event permit application. Is there a number to it? Is it?
No.
14-3?
That's.
I'll second that.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously.
Got to do that.
I know it feels like we've done that for 2 years.
Right, not to do roll call, I know.
I know, I was like, what's happening?
It's kind of strange. All right, that takes us to public hearings. These are public hearings, just so everybody knows, by state statute have to be handled much more formally than any other kind of action that we take. We're really kind of in a quasi judicial format here when we do public hearings. The comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. It says on the agenda, discussion of item may be limited to 20 minutes. We usually don't worry about that so much, but there is a very specific process about how we do the hearing itself. Staff introduces it. We give the applicant an opportunity to address council and give any additional information that they may want to give. At that point, council typically is given some time to address the applicant or staff with any questions or comments they have. Then I will formally open the hearing up for public comment, and anybody that wants to comment from the public needs to state their name and address before they speak. And then when that's done, we'll close the public comment section of the hearing and we'll deliberate. So that's how that process works. So this first one is item number 9, transfer of liquor license for High Spirits Liquors from Karen and Mark Vandenbrand to John 2.11 LLC, sole member Joe Stengler, maybe?
Same, yeah.
For premises at 144 Highway 550. That's High Spirits Liquors, as it says. Pam?
Yeah, but that's, the council does have before them an application for the transfer of a liquor store liquor license. And this business is already in existence over near the Conoco station, High Spirits Liquors. And the new applicant is holding the license as an LLC, John 211, and there is one member, John Stengel. The premises of the license is legal address is 144 Highway 550. Now, state law doesn't require a public hearing for transfers, but we've always brought them to council, so that's why I'm here. The premises were posted, everything was done as I do for an application that is done before council. Other than the fact that on a transfer, they don't have the same timeframes that we have on a new license. And everything has been done. All of the processes have been met, and all the fees have been paid. On a transfer, the state does allow the local jurisdiction to give a temporary operating permit so that the business can continue to operate until they receive the state license. Otherwise, there'd be a lapse and they would have to close. So they're also requesting that from the town council. The applicant is not here. I'm speaking on the applicant's behalf. So if anyone has any questions.
The applicant is online.
Oh, is he?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
All right. Well, let's, again, as I said about the public hearing process, a little more formal. I will first offer the applicant an opportunity to speak if they want. If there's any other information they may deem necessary or not. Joe, you want to add anything? If not, that's okay. Just not. Okay. Then I will ask council if you have any comments or questions for either staff or the applicant. Straightforward. Pretty straightforward. All right, then I will open it up to public comment. Anybody either in the audience here in the room or on Zoom want to address council? Typically, we don't allow, in public hearings, you don't allow the public to directly address the applicant. If you have questions or comments, you direct them to council, and council directs them at the applicant. Again, I know this is a kind of strangely formal process, but it's just the way it's supposed to work. So anybody on Zoom have any comments or questions? No hands? Okay, then I will close the public comment portion of the hearing and bring it back up here. So we want to make a motion?
I move to approve the transfer of the liquor store liquor license for High Spirits Liquor.
All seconds. Any other discussion?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Congratulations, Mr. Stengel. All right.
Hey, John.
I'm
about to join Zoom and it always blows up. Can you rescue me if it does?
Yeah, there's just don't connect to audio.
No
Say
audio.
no audio. That should do it.
Okay, yeah.
All right, that takes us to the next public hearing, item number 10, application replat. Location town of Ridgway, block 34, a portion of blocks 11 and 12, and blocks 13 through 15. Address 185 North Main Street and 195 North Main Street. Zone historic business. Applicant Firehouse Investment Real Estate LLC. Owner Patrick O'Leary. Firehouse Investment Real Estate LLC. And Stephen Chevalier. Thank you. Preston, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to introduce TJ DeLubac, who is our Well, he's the principal of Community Planning Strategies, the town's planning consultant. TJ has been the rep from CPS, our rep, for over a year now, since Shay's departure. So Polly, JT, TJ is on Zoom. TJ, can you hear us?
I sure can. Good evening, everyone.
Take it away.
All right. All right. Well, thanks so much, Mayor. As you mentioned, this is a replat. And so again, I'm going to kind of go through this pretty high level to hit on some of the high points. There's a lot more detail in the staff report, and then feel free to ask any questions to clarify things once I'm through. So with that, this replat is as part of a redevelopment proposal known as the Firehouse Mixed Use Project, which will result in the current firehouse, the historic firehouse, being incorporated into a mixed use structure with both commercial and residential uses. As part of the redevelopment process, several town applications and processes have already been approved and completed. The Planning Commission and/or Town Council have previously approved the following requests for this property. First, it's allowed a reduction of 3 on-site commercial parking spaces required, and allowed the applicant to pay the fee in lieu for the remaining 2 required spaces to be located off-site. Second, there was an increase to, or variance to allow an increase to the building height to 41 feet. There's also a approval to allow a building over 15,000 square feet. And most recently, the Town Council approved an encroachment permit to allow patio seating on the sidewalk within the Lena Street right-of-way. And now we have, well, I guess then I would say that town staff is also currently reviewing a building permit for the construction and development of the property, along with a full plan set for the proposal. This replat is required because the proposed building spans 2 parcels, and the code does not allow buildings to expand onto 2 parcels. Excuse me. Combining these parcels is required in order for staff to allow the issuance of the building permit. So this is an issue that came up through the building permit review process that we've then requested that the applicant submit this application. Of note, the proposed building has been substantially reduced in size from the original plans that were submitted in 2019, I believe, in conjunction with some of the other applications that I mentioned before. The northern portion of the property, which was originally anticipated to be a 3-story tall expansion of the building, is now an outdoor / covered patio seating area to support the other commercial uses such as the restaurant in the building. The applicant wishes to combine parcels 1 and 2, as I mentioned, and if approved, the newly combined parcel will be 0.396 acres in area. And currently the parcels currently the parcels to be combined are owned by 2 separate entities. And you'll see that the staff recommended condition is that those 2 parcels be under 1 ownership in a little bit. So the applicant has submitted the hearing application form, associated fees, final plat materials, and other required supporting materials for this public hearing to the town. The property and this hearing have been noticed and posted by the town in accordance with the Ridgway municipal code requirements. So first, to kind of go into a little bit of the analysis, first is land uses I want to talk about. So the subject property is currently home to the historic firehouse with other ancillary buildings on the property. Per the plans that have been submitted, the historic structure will be incorporated into the overall structure being proposed. And as mentioned prior, the applicant seeks to develop a mixed-use structure that houses both commercial and residential uses, which are appropriate in the HB zone district. While some site improvements will be required, adjacent infrastructure such as utilities, water sewer mains, sidewalks, roads, all those utilities are already present. Lastly, the subject property is flat with no significant natural resources or drainage concerns. The project includes 6 residential units. At this time, because we haven't received a condominiumization plat, we're anticipating that all of the residential units, including the commercial units below, will be under single ownership and for rent units. But I think that the applicant might want to expand on that. They expanded a little bit in the Planning Commission hearing, but we have not received the formal information on that yet. So then, as I mentioned, if the units are to be sold, a condominium plat would have to be approved by the town subsequent to this replat application. The project also proposes commercial uses, including a restaurant, greenhouse, and office space. It is our understanding that this is not fully inclusive of all the uses that the applicant thought were going to be in the project from the beginning, when we were talking about all the variances, the height limits, and the building size. Section 7315A, for those who are following along at home on their code, sets forth the required dimensional standards which need to be met for various uses within each zone district. A table identifying those required standards was included in the staff memo. And based on our review, all dimensional standards are able to be met by this replat, and the replat is consistent with the information that we're seeing on the building permit. So all of the dimensional standards, height, setbacks, lot coverage, things of that nature are met. The proposed development and on-site parking will be accessed from the adjacent alleys that abut the property. The front door for the commercial uses will be from Lena Street. The proposed parking garage, which is on the first floor, will have 10 spaces of dedicated residential parking. And as I mentioned, Planning Commission back in December of 2019 approved a variance to reduce the required number of on-site commercial parking spaces by 3 spaces. This is a little bit of confusing math, so there might be some discussion on it, but this action changed the applicant's required parking from 5 spaces to 2 spaces. Then the applicant has proposed to pay a fee in lieu for these non-residential parking spaces. The code does set forth, excuse me, a fee of $3,000 to be paid for off-site commercial parking spaces, and therefore the applicant will pay $6,000 for the fee in lieu at the time of before the building permit is issued. Per the submitted utility plans for the building permit, all connections are proposed to tap into existing town water and sewer services located in North Laura Street. Utility connection, design, and installation will be reviewed and approved, as well as inspected through the building permit and encroachment permit process. The property has been posted and noticed by the town in accordance with the town code, as I mentioned, and as of putting together this agenda item in the staff report, we have not received any public comments on this item. Planning Commission met on March 29th, and at that meeting, following a public hearing, they voted by a vote of 5-0 to recommend approval of the replat with the 1 recommended staff condition. Excuse me. And then, so with that, upon the review of the application against applicable town standards, staff recommends that the town of Ridgway Town Council approve the firehouse replat with the following condition. 1, both properties shall transfer to 1 ownership prior to recording. So that's the end of my staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you all might have. And I saw Mr. O'Leary in the audience, who I'm sure has some words to share as well.
Great, thanks, TJ. Yeah, so the next step in the public hearing will be to allow the applicant opportunity to add any additional information you might want to add. Yeah, just mainly so that the people on Zoom can hear you.
Hello again, council members and new council members. Welcome. Well, hello, Preston. My name is Patrick O'Leary. I live at 182 Juniper Road South up on Log Hill. I am the managing member for Firehouse Investment Real Estate, LLC, and I am here to hopefully gain your approval to conjoin my parcel with the parcel owned by my neighbor, Steve Chevalier, and his wife, Kathy. We have been in an option agreement working together for the last 3 years now. And I thank you for having that patience. And Steve and Kathy are willing contributors of their land to our development. They will ultimately own a condominium, hopefully, on the 3rd level in exchange for the real estate. So the comment that I really want to make is that at the Plan Commission, this did come up. And I believe in December of 2019, I mentioned that at the end of our construction process, we were going to be submitting for a condominium subdivision and a replat at that time to provide for fee simple condominiums within the project. At one time, there were going to be 5 such units. Now there are 2. So under the advice of counsel, who is Michael Hockersmith of Hockersmith and Whitmore out of the Array, has been representing me through this whole process. He believed it was in our best interests, all of our best interests, including the town's, to bring forward that request for condo subdivision towards the end of the project when the physical reality of the building is there. And then he felt it would be, an administrative process to come through for the town of Ridgway to consider approval of that. And then we would get it accomplished so that we could, sell 2 of the units. I do believe that the Chevalier's plan is to retain that unit and either provide it as a rental facility and or to occupy the unit themselves. And I don't think that decision has been made. So those are my comments. And I think that if we might hit on a couple of subjects, I might go ahead and allow the council members to ask questions of me or discuss this among yourselves. But we cannot move forward, of course, if we don't conjoin these parcels. And we very much want to move forward.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Okay, so I'll bring it back up here to ask council if you have any comments or questions for staff or the applicant.
I do have a question for TJ. As suggested, I have a question about the math. If we're reducing the street parking burden by 3, shouldn't it be $3,000 per parking space that we don't have, not $3,000 per parking space that they are provided?
So I think potentially the simplest way to understand it is that the requirement is 5. By granting a variance, the requirement was reduced to 2. So the obligation of the applicant is 2 spaces, not 5.
So then they're not providing
Correct.
the 2 spaces. So they're okay. I got it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had that same question at Planning Commission. We had to go through that for a while. So.
Yeah.
The math teacher in me is like really
Yeah.
stressed by that mathematical equation.
So if I may on that, Mr. O'Leary and I had a couple, or just yesterday, had a conversation. His recollection on that granted variance was a little bit different than what's depicted in the memo. I don't want to speak for you, Pat, but I'll try, and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. He was under the impression back in December of 2019 that the variance did not take away his requirement to pay the fee in lieu for those 3 spaces. So he is under the impression that he has to pay the $3,000 for 5 spaces. Is that correct? Now, TJ and I have committed to looking back to through the minutes and maybe watching, or actually at that point, we'd have to listen to the recordings just to verify. But our collective understanding is what we have in the memo at this point. So just full disclosure, certainly admire Mr. O'Leary and bringing that up and perhaps wanting to pay the town a little bit more, but at the end of the day, we'll make sure we get it correct.
And honestly, that really wasn't substantial to the question at hand. It was just in a staff memo and I was confused about it.
Okay.
So may I comment?
Sure.
Since I,
Yes.
that was, it wasn't that clear at the plan commission meeting. And so.
At the original planning commission or the one?
The most recent one.
Most recent.
But I felt like the commissioners eventually talked themselves through it and came to at least the conclusion that I really needed. And what I needed most is for the town to reaffirm that I wasn't going to be held to putting 3 commercial parking spaces within the project, because none of our plans, either the larger one or the smaller one, ever anticipated being able to provide for commercial parking. One of the reasons the variances was granted is that it really would have impacted Lucy's Garden. And I very much wanted to preserve Lucy's Garden. So when I did talk to Preston, I mentioned, hey, we need a public parking facility. And the way I recollected it was there were more commercial parking spaces involved previously when I was in build on Mr. Chevalier's land. But so the mere fact that I don't have to park the commercial required spaces in the code, I didn't understand. I asked Preston, why wouldn't you be charging me for those? Because it's an economic value for me not to have to displace building structure. So I offered to say, hey, whatever you think is fair, I'll live by it. So, but I have no problems at all making the contributions to the public parking facility for the 5 spaces. So I wasn't going to stand my ground on the 2 because it seemed illogical to me. If you're waiving it and you're providing economic benefit to me, I should provide some economic benefit to the town. So that was my point.
Thanks, Patrick. And I will just throw out really quickly, just for historical background, that for much of the town's history up until about probably 15 or 20 years ago, the HB zone, historic business zone, did not require off-street parking at all. And it was in the more recent decade or two when town started to grow and parking concerns kind of came to the forefront that council considered the issue and decided to put in this requirement as well as the fee in lieu of, which looking at it now, I think we need to look at upgrading that fee, making it a little more in current cost evaluation, but that just so to help everybody understand. For the longest time, historic business allows you to build lot line to lot line, wall to wall without any off-street parking, and that was the way it was for decades and decades. So, so this is a big change, but it's an important one. So, anybody else have questions or comments for either staff or the applicant?
I mean, this seems pretty straightforward to combine them into a single parcel to allow this development that's been discussed at planning and zoning in here quite a bit to move forward.
Approved 5-0.
Yeah, the only thing I was maybe going to bring up for the applicant is the fact that this current project is so much different than what was originally brought forward and approved with variances 3 years ago. And maybe ask you to, for the benefit of both the audience and the newer council members, explain how it's been scaled back. And my recollection was originally there was going to be a cooking school, and that at least some of the units were going to be, whether they were going to be deed restricted or not, they were going to be affordable for the people who were teaching at the cooking school, if I remember correctly. I just wondered if you'd maybe kind of recap what was originally approved and what it's evolved to now, just so everybody understands.
Certainly, I'd be happy to. About this time last year, we were planning to go forward in August of 2021 with our construction. And for two reasons. One, we had many approvals remaining that I didn't think we could get through. We would have to been really very precise and very quick to gain the town's approvals for the whole of the project within a short period of time, based on where we were in April. Also, we got new pricing in, and as all of you know, construction costs are climbing like incredibly rapidly, and they still are. It's still an issue. However, I went back to an original idea that I had, that even if the Chevaliers would stick with me, and I would have the opportunity to control the land that I was making a huge investment next to, I'd go back to the original idea I had, and that was to build in phases. And that has led to a reduction in the size of the project from a little under 30,000 square feet to, I think it's 18,800. Just under 20,000 square feet at this point. And, the reduction of that, say 40% of mass, doesn't absolutely correlate to reduction in the cost of hard cost construction. So it did bring us to this point, but it allowed me to rethink what was happening on that north side. And I really like the reduction in scale and the concept of having an outdoor seasonal event space. It'll be partially covered. There's a patio space that will be just to the north of the beautiful rehabbed stone walls of the firehouse. And so and that's the north side of the property too. It doesn't get a lot of sun, but our plan is to have an outdoor tavern. That outdoor tavern may, with drop materials and so forth, be able to operate year round. But we plan to make it a very active area for weddings and rentals and music and community theater and other things that help really enliven the eastern end of Clinton Street. So I really like the new plan that has emerged. We've gotten very good feedback. As to the residential units, the staff report reflected that there would be no affordable housing. That's never been the case. I have always been committed to affordable workforce housing to accommodate the employees that will be part of the commercial hospitality and restaurant operations. And so out of the mix of 6 units, 4 are intended to be long-term rentals, affordable workforce housing. And that was a key element, I believe, in our being able to get awarded a Colorado Community Revitalization Grant of $500,000, which really helps close a gap on following all the affordable rental housing regulations. And that is going to be restricted by the grant for 20 years.
Which is deed restricted?
Pardon?
They will be deed restricted?
Well, they will be restricted by agreement, and I am more than willing to work that agreement and kind of mirror that with an agreement with the town of Ridgway, if the town would desire that. And if we go through the condominium subdivision process and I make one condo be the 4 rental housing units, it could carry a deed restriction, I believe. So I hope that was responsive.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. That's very helpful.
Any questions? Anyone?
Was the greenhouse part of the original plan, or was that?
It was part of the plan back in March, or back in December of 19 when we came forward. It's always been a part of the plan.
Even when they the school was there, so. it's not-
Pardon?
Even when the cooking school was there, it's not replacing this.
Yeah,
That was part of the school.
we're viewing it as kind of an integral part of our brand for the restaurant and the hospitality complex. You know, recognizing that food security is important to all of us, and knowing that a lot of the produce on your plate, the herbs that are seasoning the food, were grown here, right here in Ridgway, right on site, under controlled conditions. As far as the cooking school is concerned, we have not abandoned the plan. I just didn't make a deal with the people that I expected to make a complete deal with. And so the culinary director for our commercial complex is just feels that person cannot accomplish that while opening up the entire restaurant operation and so forth. So the second floor offices are being designed with an eye towards it being potentially classroom space in the future for a cooking school that hopefully kind of evolves from the success of the restaurant operation.
That's helpful. Thank you. Anybody
Any
else?
other questions?
One other question. It's been a couple of years since we had talked about it. And so the scale of the greenhouse, is it greenhouse? Is it aquaponics? Is it hydroponics?
It will be aeroponic growing with towers. There may be smaller hydroponic, but it is 1,800 feet floor space, 2,000 feet floor space. And you can do a lot of growing. You know, the correlation is 10 times what, you know, in terms of productivity, you can produce 10 times as much from the tower growing and the controlled growing with 10% less water, 10% less energy involved as you can from flat gardening, whether it's table or on the ground. Those are sort of the correlative ratios. So we're very interested in accomplishing that as an integral part of the restaurant concept.
Great. Thanks for clearing that up. Anything else from council? Applicant or staff? Nothing? Okay, I'll open up public comment. Anyone either in the room or on Zoom have anything they want to add? Tom, you want to come up to the podium, please?
Tom McKinney, 545 Hyde Street, Ridgway, Colorado. I think this is a great project. I was involved or going to meetings when it started out. I'm tickled to death, or not tickled to death. I think that the reduction in size and scale is actually a creative. I'd have liked to seen with that reduction in size and scale, a reduction in height, but I think that's water under the bridge. I think that the town needs to get behind this and try to make that as successful as we can. And I think it's a good project. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Anyone else, if you're here in the room or on Zoom? Nobody? Okay, I will close the public comment portion of the hearing and bring it back up here to deliberate.
This part seems pretty simple to me,
Mhm.
so I don't see any issues with it. So unless anybody has any objections, I'll move to approve the Town of Ridgway Firehouse replat with the following condition that both properties shall transfer to one ownership prior to recording.
I'll second that.
Great, motion made and seconded. One last chance for discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, that takes us to policy matters, starting with item number 11. Review and action on encroachment permit application for town property related to the construction of aforementioned Old Ridgway Firehouse project. Preston.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So before you is an encroachment permit application for the same project, the Ridgway Firehouse project. Question before you all this evening right now is whether to allow the developer to close and privately use for a period of about 17 months, I believe it is. Town sidewalk on the east and north sides of the project. The portion of Lena Street Alley on the south side, nearly 2/3 of the Clinton Street Alley on the west side of the project, and then town parking spaces on the east side of the project. There are a number of considerations here. The points that were made in the memo were simply made just to aid the conversation. I believe Sean Merrill, the superintendent for FCI contractors and the person who submitted the application on Mr. O'Leary's behalf, is here somewhere, either in the room, nice to meet you, to talk more to the request and the application itself, and also to present some alternative concepts, which I can bring up on the screen. Happy to answer any questions now, but I guess for now, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. That's very helpful. This is not a public hearing, so we don't have to be quite so formal. I will give the applicant or the applicant's rep an opportunity to give us more background.
Sure. Allow me to introduce FCI constructors who are here with us tonight. The two lead people on our team, Matt Opperly is the project manager, and he will have total oversight for the whole of the project. Sean Merrill is going to be the project superintendent on site. And so both of them are here to make sure you have a complete understanding of our approach on our requested encroachments into the town's right of way necessary for construction. And in some cases, it might appear to be more than you would wish to grant, but I think they have very good reasons related to safety for their workers as well as safety for the public as we're going through the construction process. So if it's all right, I don't know which of you decided you would walk through the visuals. This is Sean Merrill. We're glad to have him on the project. FCI, as you guys know, across our region and specifically in Uray County and the town of Ridgway, has had great success with their projects. They built our senior school. They've remodeled our library. They recently brought in the old courthouse project on time and on budget, and smart money wouldn't have been on both of those. So I'd just like to introduce Sean Merrill, who will walk you through our plans. Take control track.
Welcome, Sean.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you making some time for us. So when I first put this plan together and sent it to Mr. Neal, I wasn't thinking outside of the box yet, and I was just going into it like we always do. Okay, we just need to close off the alleys because we're building right next to the alleys, and with the excavations coming into the alleys and then doing the work and so on and so forth. It's very commonplace for us to just close off entire alleys. You know, I went around town and looked and saw that our neighbors up the street have an alley closed and they have an entire street closed. And so I thought, okay, this is kind of in line with how we're accustomed to things. So that's how I sent it in initially. I spent a day here a week or two ago and I I had a very informal conversation with the guy on the back of the trash truck and said, hey, how do you run around in the alleys back here? I know that wasn't the guy you talked to, but
Sometimes it is.
I was actually thinking it's done great.
But so, and just in speaking with him, I thought, okay, yeah, we can just access from the southern alley off of the highway there, and from the western alley from, I can't recall the name of that street. Cora, okay. And then upon reading staff recommendation of getting larger deliveries through there, and really, it's not a good idea to close both of the alleys, especially both of them at the same time. Then we kind of went back to the drawing board and thought about more of, okay, how can we keep flow going through here, and how can we keep traffic moving and yet still accomplish our tasks? So we kind of really tightened our belt and thought, okay, well, maybe if we're just asked for 4 feet of the alleys and leave 12 feet of the alleys available. CDOT requires a minimum of 10 feet, up to 12 feet for industrial lanes. So we really rethought the process of, okay, let's figure out how we can keep both of these alleys open. Because, you know, you got all the other businesses to the south of us there that have to remain as with as least impact to them as possible. So that's where we came up with this concept of keeping the two alleys, 12 feet worth of the alleys open for most of the time. But the reality of it is we still will need to encroach into the alleys during some portions of the project for foundation excavations, utilities. Ultimately, we're paving these alleys. And so I sent Mr. Neal a new proposal here of keeping the 12 feet of the alleys open for approximately 12 months, and then closing one alley or the other when we absolutely have to for a total of 5 months. And that sequence will juggle and go back and forth. But that is kind of the overall concept there of fencing off our area that will enable the safety of both our workers and the general public and try to keep functionality of the alleys.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you scroll down?
I think that would be important
Okay.
for their understanding.
Right, so in this slide is when we're building foundations along the south side of the site and utilities in the alley on the south side and paving the south side of the alley. So this is the second, we call it Plan B. It's not really like moving, okay, Plan A is not working, so let's do Plan B. This is just traffic control Plan B of when we absolutely have to encroach in that Lena Street alley, then we do have it closed off and fenced off, yet we leave the Clinton Street alley north-southbound open and available for traffic. And that is anticipated to be 2 different durations. The dates are down in the bottom right corner from about August this year through October, and then again at that same time frame next year.
These dates are pretty rough. I think that's the ideal time frame. I'm sure they'll adjust.
That's what's anticipated.
During excavation,
Anticipated.
when we're erecting steel, there's going to be times when we've got to close those off. And of course, when we're doing the exterior facade, the skin on the building, we're going to have to close one alley at a time. So it's going to be off and on, it seems like.
We have also begun some community outreach and been visiting with neighbors to the south and going over this plan and trying to get their acceptance of it also. And thus far, that's going very well.
We're understanding that the highest use of the alley are True Grit. Some of those restaurants are coming through the north-south alley there to make deliveries, and that's who you guys met with today was True Grit, and who else?
That was it.
Okay.
Well, today, I've met with Timber Creek, their owners. We also touched base with Andy at Ridgway Adventure Sports. And the reception has been quite good. This is Plan C, so this is just showing where we're closing.
When we have to close the Clinton Street.
When we have to close Clinton Street alley, what that
Clinton Street alley.
And so the idea there is a semi truck would come off of William Street. They could park there and take the food in a block away.
And Tammy also thought maybe they could come in from Cora and back down the alley to the intersection.
Guys, it sounds like you really thought out the vehicular traffic. But as you notice in that lower right-hand corner, you've got it fenced off for the mid-block crossing of Lena Street, pedestrian-wise. So when you think about our summer pedestrian traffic and people walking by Ridgway Adventure Sports and True Grit, as of right now, you don't have an easy way for them to be like, whoops, can't go this way. I got to cross over to the Hartwell Park side. I don't think it's as big a deal on Clinton Street, but Laura Street, Lena gets kind of congested as far as pedestrian traffic kind of being all over the place. So just, it's close, so I don't know if there's a way you could try to route people somehow to that crosswalk.
We can do that with signage, if need be, just to let them know that it's closed to the north. That's what you suggest.
Yeah, no, what I'm suggesting is.
You're referring to this spot, right?
We need to get people to here.
Okay.
Now, there is a crosswalk to the park, and that's an option to walk across the street and then unfortunately cross again at the corner. Our alleys are wonderful. I would encourage people to walk the alleys because FCI will keep them safe and you can read great poetry along the way. Anyway, but you know, there may be, is there a way that we could at least give pedestrians the opportunity? I just don't know. We can give them an opportunity safely to walk along the fence.
Right.
Because on this one-way street, it will be unlike Clinton Street where you can park along the construction fence parallel, right? So I just don't know if you can, if we can create a sort of a safe walking zone that the vehicular traffic will respect.
It's just, I think it's
I don't
just
know.
something to consider when I look at this. It sounds like we really thought it through the alleyway piece, but that pedestrian piece is a little shakier.
Yeah, I definitely was gonna bring up the same point about the degree of closure that you have on the east along Clinton, Lena, for that whole half block is pretty extreme for such a highly trafficked area by pedestrians. And I was hoping that we could maybe talk about pulling that back in a little bit somehow. Just because to have that whole light green area, and I think I'm looking at, in our packet, be closed off all the way around the corner is, it's gonna have a major impact. We're talking, say, 17 months. So, you know, I found myself having gone to New York City for spring break, thinking about all the construction there and how they do these elaborate, and I'm not suggesting you do this, but you know, they have covered pedestrian ways when they have to do construction tunnels. And, you know, I just hoping that there's maybe some way to, I mean, as Beth says, maybe even just bring back the fence 4 or 6 feet just in the corner from, will be the southeast corner up to the parking area so that people can safely walk to that crosswalk that's in the middle of Lena Street. And then, you know, again, I guess my question would be, you've got your fence drawn in on this drawing on the curb, it looks like, right? Where it's not parking. So the corner bit, the fence is actually going to sit right on the curb.
Yes.
Okay.
So and you're not planning to have, you're planning to direct pedestrians to the other side of the street.
Or via the alleys.
Or via the alleys.
I also did not, when we came all the way to this corner right here, I wasn't taking into consideration people that were coming over here. I just figured it's closed and there's not any real reason. I wasn't thinking of people coming over to the park. But I think we could give at least like a 5-foot sidewalk right there.
That would make it that huge.
I think
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that would be a great concession if we could do that.
Like, I think when you notice the other closures that have been happening, we went to the Space to Create contractors and said, if you close this street during our busy season, we're gonna have issues. And if we don't, when I think about farmers market days and people walking around Hartwell Park and, you know, especially those Friday afternoons or Thursday nights with concerts in the park, being able to get people access to that sidewalk it was my kind of #1 thing I thought of when I saw this.
That and the other thing, and I'm glad you mentioned the other project, because we've got agreement that they'll reopen that street at the end of June, right? Is our current agreement?
Mid-June.
Mid-June, okay. And you're looking to start this mid-June. What is our timing for the Lena Street works? As we put in the RFP?
That remains to be seen. We'll discuss that later this evening.
Okay.
And really depends.
But again, my concern is that we've got a lot of street blockage and taken away a lot of parking, especially during the middle of summer. And I'm not against the project, but I have concerns about how we actually manage that, so.
And going off of what Russ said about the parking, have you guys had conversations with, your neighbors there and like Ridgway Venture Sports, True Grit, about losing about half of their parking?
Yes, we specifically.
Okay.
pointed that out.
Fantastic. Thank you. Awesome.
Am I correct in reading this? You've got a sort of a curly line drawn on some of the angle lots right in front of the firehouse and labeled construction parking. That means those are going to be open for specific people working on the project to pull in, right?
We anticipate using that for our workforce, some of our workforce.
Does that mean that section right there will be open at night for after you're done for the day?
No,
No,
the fence will open up, get in there and park, close the fence back.
just was hopeful that maybe we could do some mixed use there and have it be available when you guys aren't working, but I understand that.
This part of the parking is also going to be torn up for a large period of time with utility tie-ins right there. And rebuilt civil features there.
And that brings up a point that maybe, you guys have a great reputation, you've done amazing work in the region. Maybe just the flexibility of saying, as you just described, that once you're done tearing that up and putting in the utilities and then covering it back up and repaving it, that maybe sometime before that 17 months is done, it could be brought back into sort of mixed use parking area where when you're not working, people who are downtown at night and going to restaurants and stuff could park. Just something to think about. Maybe.
And I think the public would really appreciate that. I think there's going to be a point, as there always is in a project, where from the outside, you're like, oh, it looks like, and you're definitely not done. But if we can kind of make those concessions to the community that, yeah, we're moving forward, we're getting this, we're returning this corner to kind of a public space.
I think once we have construction far enough along, our concern is we'll be running forklifts with wide material coming through there, so we didn't want those loads to be over cars or the public.
Understood.
That was the biggest piece for closing off those. Well, one of the pieces for closing off those spaces or keeping them to our parking or trailers or whatever.
So if we had, you were actually talking about putting in a 5-foot walk area, where would that be in relation to what I'm seeing here?
That would be right here is where that sidewalk goes across the park.
Okay,
So
just
we'd be
in
right.
that area to get to the crosswalk. Okay, all right.
That would be awesome.
And the main concern is the crosswalk leading to the park.
Yeah, it just,
not the one to the
it
north.
just, no, because that, I think that area you have options, but that mid-block, getting people, because yes, if you have signage down on the 62 end, but that is a block that invites people to be there.
Sure.
And so we can get them to be able to circulate back somewhere else. That would be great.
That mid-block crossing is useful. It's huge.
I wish it was used more by
Yeah.
people who weren't using it.
I would say, one of the reasons I bought the project is because, as Jen Coates once described it, it was made in Maine. And, it's a great location and every one of those parking spaces is valuable. I recognize that from a retail commercial standpoint. And to the extent we can modify our fences when it is safe to do so and we're done with work, we'll make every effort as a team to do that.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Project.
That's all I'm asking.
Great.
And thank you for your revision. Your plan ABC is head and shoulders above what we had gotten in our packet.
Yeah, and you had mentioned you had spoken with True Grit and the Venture Sports and Timber Ridge. Have you, Timber Creek, excuse me. Have you also discussed with Alagavi Azul and the Thai Paradise?
Not yet, but we will.
Okay.
We'll go both, all sides of those alleys and talk with each of the owners of the properties and make sure they understand and they get the ABC plan.
Right.
When we
So-
sat with Tammy today, this was illuminating for her. And what she understood was that we had these intervals, but they're already thought through when we're going to do it. The meeting went very well. She mentioned she was going to be on the phone. Maybe she'll comment later. I don't know.
Okay.
I have a question about actually the west alley there that, I know with Jenny Phillips' property on the other side. Is there any potential, I don't know the timeline that she's on, that there'd be any restoration, rebuild that would overlap with your plans?
There could be. And so the alley usage will only intensify, right? But I have a good working relationship, I think, with Jenny Lee, and I think we can work through those issues. I'm really not sure of her timeline either, JT. But I will say she came in and had a shot of Gentleman Jack with a few folks who were wanting to say cheers to the old Ridgway jail going to be in a place of prominence for the next century. She stopped by and met Mr. Daniels as well. So we have a good working relationship, and I think we can work through those issues. And FCI, if they've done anything in terms of proving themselves to me, it's been just how flexible they are and how good they are at their jobs. So I think we can work through it.
That
I don't know if I've
underscores the concern I have. It seems it's pretty well thought through and you're sensitive to the issues that we're bringing up. But the ability, I trust you'd have the ability to adapt to unforeseen issues that arise, during the 17 months. Whether that has to come before us or not, I'm not sure, but it sounds like you're pretty adaptive. You can work this on the fly as necessary.
We are, I think.
Terry must be talking to you guys. I don't know if I was, but these guys are
Things
good.
change all the time during construction, but this is a starting point, and we'll be very flexible.
Preston and Pam, am I right in assuming they can always use less of their encroachment permit, but if they would need more, then they would have to come back to us? Is that a fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
Did you have other questions? No, I mean, I guess in part of my question about Jenny Phillips was partially directed even to the board, because I don't know the backstory of whether Jenny has anything on slated in this 17 months plus. Not that I know of. I mean, and I actually have talked to her a bit this week. She was hopeful that she could apply for a grant from DOLA that turned out she didn't qualify for. So I'm in touch with some DOLA folks and trying to help her find, she needs to find some funding to close the funding gap on her project. So it's up in the air right now, but she's excited about the plan. She has, the plans are here at Town Hall, I believe, for the building permit, but she's looking for some gap funding for sure. So I don't think there's any sort of timeframe in the works yet. And I did have one more question. And I know that when with Space to Create, they came up with, are they working on 410s right now? Part of the time, not all the time. And then sometimes they work weekends. Do you guys have a 4-day, 5-day, or 7-day plan to accomplish this in the 17 months?
I have not
At
asked
the
that
moment, it's standard 5-day week.
8-hour
In
days?
the end, it takes what it takes. We're falling behind. We'll start working more, but we'll still fall within the construction hours that are set forth within the code somewhere. I've seen it somewhere. I can't recall what it is. Of 7 a.m.
7 to 7, I think. Maybe.
7, maybe even on Saturdays, it's still 7 to 7.
I think so.
Some days it's reduced.
I think so. I don't have it memorized.
It's 7-7.
Space to Create
7-7.
seems to be using that as kind of the.
Sometimes full on, sometimes on Sundays working quietly and.
Sometimes on Saturday morning, I'm like, oh yeah.
I was just asking more just because there are those high traffic times. Fridays, the farmer's market, of course, that's going to be obvious overlap. Thursday evenings in the summer with music. As people start piling in, weekends, especially with some of the events that happen over the weekend, high volume of folks. So yeah, just all those things that I'm sure you've navigated, but just as.
It's always going well, generally speaking, 7 to 5:30, Monday through Friday. If we start slipping, we'll start increasing those hours.
And along the lines of what JT said, and you guys obviously very familiar with these kinds of things. You know, you're obviously gonna have a bunch of workers coming and needing to park their vehicles downtown while they're working. Anything you can do to get them to like drop off stuff, tools or materials they need and park farther away if they can. The north end of Lena is typically more open. And then there's also a parking lot behind the library that's open. You guys are familiar with that. And again, just like things like the Thursdays in July, if there's any chance you can quit early on Thursdays in July, that would be very welcome. But just throwing that out as things to be aware of.
What time on Thursdays?
What time on Thursdays? The
Yeah.
music starts at 6. So, you know, just as early as you can quit. I mean,
Sure.
but I also understand that you might not be able to, so.
But that open parking on North Lena, north of us, evaporates. It starts evaporating by 4:30, 5 o'clock.
I was gonna say,
So,
honestly,
to that
and
extent,
town changes at 3:30.
Yeah.
we can kind of make sure we're talking about those Thursday dates in July.
You'll notice.
Reduce
Yeah,
the
and
intensity.
Pat's dialed in on a lot of those events in town. Like you generally know when those events are happening, Pat, so.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Anybody in the audience, either here in the room or on Zoom, have comments or questions? Tom?
Tom McKenney, and this is the third bite at the apple. I don't know who to thank, if it's Pat's crew or Preston or TJ, our planner, but this is one of the clearest presentations. And I just wanted to say from a public point of view, coming and trying to understand what's going on. This is excellent, and I think it ought to be the standard. Thank you, whoever I'm thanking, for doing this.
I think it's mostly FCI, so thank you guys.
Thank you.
I would agree.
Krista?
Krista Meyer, 357 North Lena. Just wanted a reminder that North Lena is going to be a problem too, because of Lena Commons. So that parking really isn't going to be there. Maybe we can encourage them to shut down early on Thursday. Because if I start building all that third section.
So it's a good point to mention. For sure.
One quick question, does this overlap at all with Rally in the Alley or Fête de la Musique or any of those routes?
Set de la Music was in here last month, and they've actually got two different plans. One where if we need to look at where they were doing on your block here. They knew that there was potential on the northern block of Lena, and so they were routing around that. I don't think it impacts them.
What's our start date for implementing this plan for these guys? It might actually be,
Mid-June, June 13th.
so is that the Monday after or Monday before? Okay.
Fête de la Musique is June 19th.
When's the rally?
Rallies will be fall,
Rallies in the
they'll
fall.
just have to plan around it. They'll know it when they get to that.
Matt, you're aware of that.
And it's
13 is our timeline start date is June 13th.
Right.
But you'll be mobilizing and building construction fences before that.
Potentially June.
What I've talked about with the Ridgway Chautauqua Society and Weehawken Creative Arts that are putting the Fed on, I told them not to rely on any aspect of the firehouse property this summer, not to rely on it. If it became available, maybe it's, like if we push out to July or something for good reason, maybe a band that wasn't going to play might play at the firehouse, but I don't think so. I mean, with as much pre-development work that we've had to be doing, I don't think it doesn't present the way it has in recent years.
They do have somebody, it looks like, in front of the firehouse, but it's really the one performer on their permit. So, I mean, they may be able to move behind them, they'll maybe be able to figure something out.
And I'm talking about all these property owners. I assume we talked to the bank across the street to the north.
Not yet.
Okay. just, I know you will, because it's good due diligence. And thank you for that.
We dealt with the Lena Street owners first, and I'm thankful that we did that in the last few days.
Yeah. Always helps.
Yeah.
I've got one last question, and you'll laugh because it might sound like a NIMBY question because I faced it with Space to Create with the staging lot next to me. Just categorically, you guys don't foresee any need for any off-site staging. Everything's going to be accomplished within the footprint of what's proposed.
Yes, that is what we are trying to achieve. It's a really tight site. I think everybody knows that. I mean, we're surrounded by streets and alleys, and I was originally going to lease the land across the street to the north. But
Adjacent to the bank.
that's a pretty expensive license for me to absorb, and I'd rather not. So FCI has been working diligently to try to come up with a plan that really works. But I think we can get it all done within the fenced area.
That's our goal.
That's our goal.
Cool. And it obviously really helps that you're scaling back and having that Steve's property available for staging, which wouldn't have necessarily been the case otherwise. So that's good. Anybody else? Either here or
Relocating the jail, is that coming soon?
Well, a permit was issued on Monday. Thank you very much, Preston. And to encroach on the alley so that we can do some work in the alley. We also have a 2-year open easement agreement, temporary easement agreement with CenturyLink so that we can be on their property because we have structural elements that are going to need to be worked on that requires us to go onto their property. And we have to disassemble the north wall of the jail. All that work is going to ensue in the next 2 weeks, and it has begun.
Great. Good luck.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? Okay. Any other discussion up here?
I move to approve the firehouse encroachment permit application under the A, B, and C scheme as presented tonight. With the consideration for the sidewalk.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go.
And we'll tweak that plan and send it back to them.
Great. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for working on it.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank you, Preston. And TJ, thank you.
He said, as Tom McKinney said, that this was an example of how to do things right. So thank you. All right, that takes us to item number 12, resolution number 22-05, amending the police procedures manual to add section 28, peace officer credibility disclosure notification policy. Shane.
Good evening. So as part of the legislation last year, they did Senate Bill 174 as part of the cleanup for 217 that was kind of rushed, and they found some things in it that weren't. And one of the things was officer credibility and disclosures under it's a term for Brady versus Maryland. So they came up with the Senate bill in order to do kind of a cleanup of that. And they tasked law enforcement agencies, DA's offices with writing a comprehensive policy statewide. But they also tasked each individual DA's office specifically with coming up with that policy because they're the ones that kind of carry out the Brady and if there's a credibility issue with officers. So they then formed a committee in order to review the policies and make sure that they fit within the standards that the legislature kind of set forth in doing those policies. So our DA, Seth Ryan, came up with a policy. It was reviewed by the committee and approved. And so what we're asking tonight is just to adopt that policy as written, so we have it in place in our policies.
Great, thanks, Shane. Does anybody up here have any questions for Shane about this?
Kind of slam dunk.
Yeah, I guess I would just throw out, because it's fascinating to me, the whole concept of this Supreme Court decision, Brady versus Maryland. I was totally unaware of it until I think it was when we hired you as marshal, that we had a bunch of applicants in that the interviews process. It was explained that the idea of Brady is that if an officer is caught lying, it completely destroys their credibility. It means they can't be really a credible witness in any case. So this is just putting that really informal process into our code, into our police manual, right?
Yes.
Policy. So I just think it's helpful for everybody to understand that, because it's really a key thing when it comes to, all this controversy about defunding the police and all. And it's more about just making sure that the police understand, and that the public understands, even more importantly, what the requirements are of the police in terms of credibility. So I think this is really, really important. So make sure everybody is aware of that.
Thank you.
Any questions either up here or in the audience for Shane? Anything on Zoom?
So I'll move to adopt resolution number 2205, amending the police procedure manual to add section 28, peace officer credibility disclosure notification policy.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion made and seconded. Last minute discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. Thanks, Shane.
Thanks.
Thanks for doing this. All right, that takes us to item number 13, review and action on intergovernmental agreement between the town of Ridgway and Erie County concerning noxious weed management and control services. Preston.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I'll try not to review all the background that was in the memo. Hopefully you haven't had a chance to kind of look it over. But last week, staff met with Julie, with Erie County Vegetation Management, and Tanya Ishikawa and Mary Menz with Compagri Watershed Partnership to chat about identified weed infestations around town, on town property, but particularly by the river. And then to agree upon herbicide application, when and how, at least as long as they fall in line with the application protocols and the 2011 Weed Integrated Management Plan. So it's a great conversation, a lot of takeaways there. Julie and her team are aiming to get any of the problem areas that we've identified addressed soon. When I say soon, by the end of this month, of April, it's an opportune time to do that. Before they can undertake any work, we do need an IGA with Erie County to memorialize scope of services and then payment terms. So that's what's before you.
Great, thanks, Preston. So everybody's had a chance to review this document. Anybody have any questions for?
When we met with Julie before, there was discussions about more, besides using the chemicals that Julie is recommending in limited doses and limited locations. There was talk about actually getting the town involved and working on the noxious weed problems. Is there anything that addresses this and addresses that in this IGA, or is that something we can expect Julie to coordinate with us with, or with UWP, or
To deal with the noxious weeds?
Yeah, one of the things that was brought up and discussed quite a bit was the fact that the town itself needed to do some things, not just as far as the town, but the citizens being involved in weed eradication
In terms of manual
Yeah.
eradication.
Right.
organizing volunteer poll days and things like
In
that.
order to help also with the need to reduce the amount of chemicals in locations where those might be needed.
Right, that isn't addressed or memorialized here in the IGA. I don't believe it needs to be, but that I think revolves more around education and collaboration and arranging events and volunteer opportunities, and then have Julie and her staff meeting with our public works guys occasionally to understand where they're seeing the issues. We're limited to cutting, as you all know. We cut a lot throughout the summer months, a lot, but it's not enough. It's not, which was the impetus for this whole initiative, right? So I don't know if I've answered your question, but Julie and I stay in touch quite frequently, and we will throughout the summer.
Okay.
But this IGA is meant to memorialize the work they're going to undertake here shortly to really get a handle on the weeds before the summer, before they really start to sprout.
Right, and that's good. And I think if we can, doesn't necessarily have to be in the IGA, but if we can just continue the conversation with Julie and maybe coordinate some times and places to try and get volunteers to come help out. I think that's good.
Was that discussed at all with Tanya and Mary Men's?
Yeah, it was briefly. I mean, you know better than I do. They organize periodic events. How many times did they do the weed pulls last summer down by Rollins?
I don't know how many times. I did it one day, and I don't remember a lot more. I would just say that we should encourage them to, with our help, whatever we can do to promote more of those. I think we're definitely, I think that's partly what Russ is talking about, the education effort that the town should be doing to let the public, the citizens know that if they really don't want us to be spraying at all, or at least a very minimal amount, then they got to be willing to step up and do some manual eradication.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So, I think that's really key because I've had a number of phone calls from people saying, John, we really can't allow spraying. And I said to every one of them, if you really strongly believe that, you've got to step up and volunteer to help pull weeds, because that's the only other way to do it. We can't control it. Yeah. And fact of the matter is, as Julie explained to us whenever she was here last, even that, we could be pulling all day, every day, the way it is now, and probably not be able to get ahead of it. So
You eventually have to have a van down by the river.
So I think I would, taking off what Russ said, I think we need to, the town needs to step up and work with Tanya and Mary to have a comprehensive education program and try and schedule more volunteer days for the public to get out.
Yes, we can certainly do that. Again, the town's policy is specific to town property. Folks can do whatever they think they need to do on their own properties, but I hear you, read you loud and clear. We can certainly circle around with Tanya and Mary and see how we might be able to bolster the effort to get more volunteers out there on a regular basis. Just trying to address those problem areas. Julie did a great job last time, and there's materials on the website too that talk to this, but she intends to use herbicides that are known not to migrate in the soil. And she can explain this much better than I can, but she did it just last week. The amount of herbicide applied in I think it's like over 20 gallons of solution is just a couple of ounces. So just to paint a picture, it's a very small amount. Now, when they're dealing with it, when it's super concentrated in those jugs, that's when it's like, well, you don't really want to be hanging out with that stuff. But again, just trying to paint a picture of how minimal, I'm not trying to minimize it by any means, but how minimal the amount of herbicide applied to the, I guess, I don't know if it's water or what the base solution is. The dilution level. That's the word I was looking.
But I'm good.
And given the dilution level, do they know, is that going to be an effective hit on the weeds?
Yes.
We ran into that anecdotally, so this in Paonia for years, where we ended up having to do many more applications over time, given the agreed upon dilution levels. So rather than having this happen every spring and fall and spring and fall for 10 years, there was, depending on the weed dependent, hit them harder more, even though I know that begs concern about, additional amount of herbicides in the environment.
watershed.
Was it January? Where's the meeting we were online? I remember sitting, we had, such an exhaustive conversation about how we really love Ridgway's new spray policy, but we've gone past that point. We're affecting native plant communities, which is another downside that is we're like, oh, we can't spray. Letting noxious weed take over isn't really an option either. So I think this IGA gives us the step to I felt really good about what Julie said to us back in January. I think we're gonna have to go with what she's suggesting, and if by the fall we're looking at, oh, we need to do this again in the spring, then it begs the question of, are we doing it at an effective level? Does that make sense? I took away from what she said. I was like, I feel pretty confident that you've got this dialed, and she sounded like she's like, this is what we need to do.
During that knockout, drag out, was there any discussion of testing water, river water for the effect of herbicide migrating?
So, well, JT, I want to answer your question first. So yeah, I'm not a subject matter expert, but Julie and her crew, she was saying, very confident that what they're going to be applying will work. I can't talk to, this time next year, will they need to do it again? I guess we'll need to evaluate, year-to-year basis, but would really like Julie. I thought Julie was going to be here. Sorry about that, but need her to talk to that in more detail. Your question about water testing, that was a huge topic of conversation with Tanya and Mary in the room. The buffer we're talking about and addressing the weeds along the river corridor, most of the problem areas are, between 50 and 60 feet removed from the water line, from the edge of the river. So, and nowhere near the high water mark. So that said, there's no immediate plans to test the water. Another piece I do want to bring up, because I know we're going to get calls about it. I don't want to get caught off guard. Is and the Uncompahgre Watershed Partner, UWP they thought this was a great idea, using dye to identify those spots that are being sprayed, so that folks know what they do right there. Well, herbicide was applied yesterday. So, and Julie and her team, they have to follow state regs, and of course the regs that are in our integrated management plan for noticing and putting up signs, so folks know what they might be getting into. It's a roundabout way of saying they're going to be putting dye in what they're applying, but at this point, I don't believe there's going to be a need to test the water, given that the herbicides they've committed to using are not known to migrate in the soil.
I just want to add, I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at another application next spring or in the fall. Like, hopefully we're going to see it reduce, but
The problems become significant enough, it's not going to go away.
Yeah, no, I was concerned. So I think, and again, I think that my understanding is that it's really has to be a comprehensive effort. That the need to spray comes from how out of hand the problem has gotten, and we need to get ahead of it again. But the only way we're going to stay ahead of it is a combination of very minimal spraying, eventually none, hopefully, and a really comprehensive manual eradication effort. Otherwise, it's just going to. It's just the nature of the problem. So I guess I would just throw out that, Preston, I know you and staff do a great job of communicating with people like Julie and her team and Tanya and Mary as well, and just keep the lines of communication open. If something happens that any one of the parties feels like they need to ask for some testing, we could do that. I was also going to say, we all know how kind of toxic the Uncompahgre is already, just from the turbidity of the Red Mountain Pass area, but that's no excuse to not be responsible about the pesticide use up to the river. So I don't think it needs to be in the IGA. I think it just needs to be something that's understood between the parties. At least that's my take.
And does the chemical that we're using, will it have any impact on like bee population? I know we have our community apiaries, and I'm just kind of trying to think about all of the impacts it could have.
Yeah, interesting question. I wish I could give you an answer. I don't know. We can certainly find out. I'd be interested myself to see what Julie would say. I would really hope her answer is no, absolutely not.
Yeah, I would bet that anything she's using is not
Yeah, and I remember, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, go ahead.
In the comment or in the knockdown drag out that Beth referred to earlier, she did say that it was not, the B City USA or some classification was not going to be withheld because of this specific
That's right.
issue.
That was me Googling.
Cool, thanks. Just wanted to make sure that, we're not contributing to the death of the bees as well.
That's right.
And just so you remember, there was a request back in January for Julie to do an annual presentation, which I thought was a great idea. Report on her activities here in town and kind of what she's seeing in progress, and actually put out a report together. And so we'll probably look to July, August, or September of every year for that. But I'll check with Julie on the question.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Anyone else? Anyone on Zoom have their hand up question? Nope.
So given that, I'll move to approve the intergovernmental agreement between the town of Ridgway and Ridgway County concerning noxious weed management and control services.
Second.
All right, motion made by Russ, seconded by Terry. Any last minute discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you. Takes us to number 15 and 16, which are somewhat related. Item number 15 is review and action on a contribution request from the Home Trust of Ridgway County.
So did you skip 14?
This is 14.
What is 14? I'm sorry. Yes, 14 and 15. Ratification of letter of support for congressional directed spending request for acquisition of land at 660 Sherman Street for a mixed use development project. Andrea Sokolowski is here. Thank you, Andrea, to give you guys more information on this. There was, they had to get, Home Trust of Ridgway County had to get this request in last week. And so Preston and I talked about it and said that we go ahead and draft the letter and have me sign it and then get ratification at tonight's meeting. With the understanding, we assume that the council would be okay with it. But Andrea, if you'd be so kind as to give us a little background, that would be great.
Yes, so we are applying for DOLA turnkey funds to acquire the property at 660 Sherman Street. At the same time, we're also, in case that falls through, or even maybe we won't get it till like a later date potentially. This opportunity came up. Jake Neese clued me into this, that there was congressional district funding and that we could request up to $3 million to contribute to our project. And the project is what we're hoping to be is a 3-story mixed use project that includes a 2,600 square foot child care facility for infant, toddler, and potentially preschool. So it's all a little up in the air because there's some serious requirements regarding childcare about square footage per child, about playground use and sharing the playground and things like that. So TBD on exactly the age groups. We're working with Bright Futures and Tina Purcell on trying to determine, what the childcare looks like, but also the Home Trust will not be operating the childcare facility. We will be passing that off to a director or an organization like the Maslow Academy in Montrose that does childcare. So we are simply building the structure. And that will include a 1,500 square foot playground. And then we also have about 2,000 square feet of commercial space, potentially 2 units, potentially 3 units, may have room, hopefully, for an office for the Home Trust. And then we have 180A accessible unit apartment on the ground floor. And then the second and third floors are going to be 14, well, including the one on the ground floor, 14 rental units between 580 square feet, and I think the biggest one is like 1,160 square feet. 1 and 2 bedroom rental units, and those are going to be hopefully for 80% AMI and below. So an affordable rental project. Yeah, so this project, though, it's a draft pro forma that I've been working on with DOLA on, is this project's probably going to be around 12 million. So this congressional district funding would be amazing to get to offset some of those costs. And so we just went ahead and it was like a super tight deadline, and we really appreciate Preston and John, like just, coming through last minute. But if we can get it, we have applied for 1,565,000 for in total. And then that broken down, that is land purchase and closing costs, 450,000, pre-construction services, including architects, civil and structural engineers, geotech and environmental surveys, 340,000, construction insurance and interest, 275,000, and then site improvements and infrastructure at 500,000. So it's a start. That doesn't even include any of the construction, but that's all right.
I'll get the property first.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah. The owner of the property, a really awesome guy, local. He is very interested in selling property to the Home Trust, and he has offered to take 20% off of the appraised price, so that we get a little bit of a discount. So that's really awesome.
Everybody's not clear, the property is the vacant lot directly west of the Silver San Juan building where Taco Del Mar and the other offices are. Corner of Laura and highway.
It's a good spot.
This is
Yeah.
such a perfect extension of downtown.
Yeah,
Like-
it really is.
It really flows from what exists.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah, and we've even structured it so that the commercial spaces on the ground floor are closest to the Silver San Juan building, and then the childcare is on the farthest west. And then the playground has a nice little nook in the southwest corner on, I think it's Laura Street, and then there's a house right there. So I think that's a nice kind of protected area for the kids to play in.
No, that's great. So any other questions for staff? Any questions for staff or Andrea about this letter, first off? If not, we need a motion to approve, to ratify the sending of the letter which went out last week.
I move to ratify the letter of support for the congressionally directed spending request.
Seconded.
All right, motion made and seconded. I'm sorry. Even though we got a motion second on the floor, I didn't give enough opportunity for public comment. Anybody in the audience have anything to ask or any comments on this? No hands up. Anybody here? All right, taking you back to motion second on the floor. Any last minute discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Check that off.
Quick little minor thing, there's a typo in the second sentence of letter.
Yeah, there is.
I missed it.
That was already
Specifically, your office.
your office.
Oops.
Just want to prove you I read it.
Good catch, sir. You thought you,
Yeah.
well, it already went out, so.
It'd be all inclusive.
Yeah. All right, so that takes us to, this is item number 15. The home trust contribution request continued from last meeting. I don't know, let's see. Preston, you want to kind of give us an overview on that?
Sure. So at your last meeting, at the last council meeting, council expressed a commitment to contribute to the home trust. There was there was a sentiment to understand what the other governments in our region would contribute, I think. And I believe, you know better than I do, I heard Ridgway County contributed $10,000. Is that right? Congratulations, that's awesome. And from staff's perspective, I recall stating that it'd be helpful to get a specific request, a specific dollar amount for you all to consider. So that's why we're here this evening. We received a $10,000 contribution request from the home trust.
Has it been brought before the city as well?
So I did the initial kind of general one I did with you guys earlier, with the city of Ridgway, early this, actually it was probably in March. So I go back on Monday to have this specific $10,000 request.
So we would be beating them to the punch. The rivalry really.
Right.
Now, we also, when we talked about this last time, we also talked about, I think we set aside $35,000 for affordable housing.
There's a line item in the, sorry, I didn't cut you off.
Yeah.
There's a line item in the general fund labeled affordable housing. And in the 2022 annual budget, there's $35,000 in that line item. So in the memo, staff does recommend that there's going to be a contribution from you all, that any funding would come from that line item. I think if it's the moment for that, but just food for thought.
So in the follow-on and narrative on attachment one, it talks about, the contributions in the following years. Would our commitment for this year tie us to those commitments for the following?
No, it would not, for a number of reasons, one of them being Tabor. So what's before you all is a request for $10,000 or any sort of contribution for that matter out of the 2022 budget. I would recommend that any future requests be funneled through the annual budgeting, the town's annual budget process when the town council considers all the funding requests from nonprofits in the area. I can walk you through that process at a later time, but it's a more concentrated and clear approach.
Okay, great. Yeah, happy to do that.
And then I think one of the other things, when we set that budget aside, part of it was in anticipation of other developments going on around here, similar to Habitat, where we actually covered the water tap fees. And so, what other developments do we have coming up this year that we anticipate would be looking for something like that? I'm assuming the Yellow Brick Lane from Telluride Foundation would be one. Do we have any others that I'm not remembering at the moment?
I think you're spot on with the Yellow Brick Lane. Not quite sure what's going to come down the pike with that and what the request will be, but well said. In terms of other affordable housing type projects, nothing, I can't think of any.
Nothing that anybody's kind of indicated they would want something, or that we think they might be asking for anyway at this point.
Not that I recall.
Okay.
Blowing your hand around like, are you serious? Yeah, there's this and this and this.
I was going to say there are deed restricted units in the Riverfront Village project, but there has been a discussion about.
Well, the same as Lane Street Commons, so they haven't come forward with any concepts like that, so.
Well, and we are trying to still break ground on our duplex with Habitat for Humanity in Parkside by September. That's
going to be another one. Yeah.
I have a question. I know you're functioning as a nonprofit. Are there other comps for housing trusts elsewhere in the state or country that function the same way in your nascent development, where you reach out specifically to the municipalities?
Yeah, so Chafee Housing Trust, they have been in operation for about over a decade. And Reed McCullough, he's the executive director, has been mentoring me with this community land trust. And the way they started was that there was a group that was, looking for affordable housing solutions, and they landed on the community land trust model, and then they started paying him hourly to even write the 501c3 application. And that came out of, I don't know if it was county funds but it was government, local government funds. And part of this is to be able to ask for operational support from a DOLA program called the Community Housing Development Organization. So we have to qualify to become that organization. But to qualify for that, we have to have existing funding, and we have to show that we have support. And so it's kind of, this is an initial step to get bigger operational funding sources.
I remember part of that from the last meeting, just watching remotely. But yeah, I didn't know how to flesh that out. And I was looking at you when I was looking at the background as a nonprofit coming to a municipality. I was just trying to flesh that relationship out, whether that was common or not.
Yeah.
And that explains it.
So, question is, how much can we match the county's contribution? And I do, sorry, to run to the bathroom, but did anybody talk about the fact that the county's using some of their ARPA funds for their 10 grand?
I knew that, either reading it here or somewhere else.
It was in the paper. I think it was in the paper.
What funds are those?
The American Rescue Plan.
Okay.
Yeah, the American Rescue Plan, the non-entitlement unit allotment that counties and municipalities received. We've received 130,000 and change of 260,000 so far.
And my understanding is the city is waiting to get some more numbers on their excise tax on short-term rentals, I believe. And so they're planning on using that funding stream, is kind of my understanding from what I read in the paper.
So John, are you suggesting we should look at doing the same rather than taking it out of the line item?
I'm not necessarily suggesting that at all. I'm just saying that that's, I guess all I'm saying is that that 35 grand is going to go really fast. And anything we can do to find whether we contribute 10,000 out of that line item tonight and find money for the projects down the road that we know are going to be coming forward to ask for money. However we do it, we just need to be aware that we're going to need probably considerably more than that. And it's obviously one of our priority goals, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we need to, look at how else we can move money or find money for those other projects. But considering the needs of this community, I think we would be remiss in not matching the county. Honestly, especially with childcare, especially with the rental units. I mean, this is filling multiple needs of people who live and work in Ridgway.
It was proactive. It was something council can act on, and we have budget for it. And I think it's a good statement to use funding from that line item. I agree.
I completely agree.
Okay. Yep. All right. I do too. Well, so we need a motion. And first, let me not forget to ask for public comment. Anybody in the audience have anything they want to add? Questions, comments? None?
I'll move to contribute $10,000 to the Home Trust of Ridgway County in fiscal year 2022, funding to come out of the affordable housing line item in the general fund.
Second that.
Have it.
Let the
You have
record-
it out.
let the record show that everybody wanted to say. All right. I'm gonna ask for more discussion. All in favor?
The Home Trust thanks everyone so much for the support. And I just really quickly, and because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but like, for instance, with the childcare piece, the county was talking about contributing 100,000 to the Telluride Foundation when they were talking about a childcare facility. And so we will be asking the county for the same for the childcare. So hopefully there's going to be, lots of people pitching in. And then in terms of funding for more affordable housing stuff, there is a lot of really great funds coming down the pipeline. I attended the Colorado Mountain Housing Coalition Conference in Buena Vista last week, and we got an update on all the legislative stuff. And there's going to be 150 million in grant funding for affordable housing, basically for anything regarding affordable housing for the next 3 years. And it prioritizes local governments and nonprofits. It's for rural areas and increased AMIs for rural areas, potentially up to 140% AMI. There's also going to be a revolving loan fund for 150 million, and that is going to be paired with infrastructure, super low interest rates, up to 120% AMI. CHAPA is getting 25 million for 80 to 120% AMI, like the missing middle. And then there's going to be 35 million for mobile home parks to either buy the park or caps on rent or relocation payments. And then there's going to be more tax credits available, 15 million for AHTC. I'm not entirely, I think it's like modular prefab kind of stuff. So there's a lot of funding coming down the pipeline. And then, you know, at some point, I'd love to send you guys just a real quick write-up on the really cool things that different communities in Colorado are doing to just kind of attack the affordable housing problem from all sides. So like, for instance, Minturn, they decided to require their short-term rentals to be the person applying for the short-term rental license. They have to live in the property for 2 years first. Denver is doing something where Denver and Aurora, you can't short-term rental a second home. And then like in terms of what the county and towns, municipalities can be doing, there is a lot of cool stuff that if you can get some of that funding potentially for affordable housing and start a fund, there is some really cool stuff. Like there's a good deeds program where Eagle County is giving cash to sell homes to they're giving cash to sellers if they sell homes to locals. Like they'll offset the cost like by 5%, or if the seller will deed restrict the home, then they'll offer 15% to bring that price down. So there's just like a lot of, like I was taking notes like a crazy person. A lot of really cool stuff that different communities are doing, and I'm happy to share with you guys just so you have more.
Please do.
I would appreciate that very much.
In addition, locally as well, I think I might have mentioned this to you before, the San Miguel Power.
Yeah.
The Sharing Success Grant comes in the fall. This last one was $20,000 to the Telluride Foundation in support of the 2 projects in Norwood and Ridgway. The rest of it went to the Voyager Youth. So it's exactly the same kind of a distribution between affordable housing and daycare. And that comes on a quarterly, annual basis in the fall, but quarterly, there's $9,000 available through the community focused program that you can apply to, which I'm sure would get interesting attention by the board of directors.
And so I took your suggestion from last time and I applied for $7,000 because I didn't want to be greedy and like.
I'm just curious that you threw out a lot of big numbers there at the beginning. That's a mix of, I assume, of federal and state money. Or is that, do you know?
No, I think this is all state. I remember maybe
mentioning that
Yeah,
that there was some
HB and SB. HB is House bill, SB is
State bill.
Senate bill.
Senate bill. Okay, so these are all HB and SBs.
Oh.
So I think it's
Cool.
the state. So, yeah.
You're right. The Colorado Department of Housing had definitely jacked up their spending levels starting back in 2019, 2020, at least talking about it. My recollection was that with COVID and everything, some of that got put off, but I think it's actually.
I think it got paused.
Yeah, and so now it's coming back up, and it's just a lot of money. So.
And, and then Senator or State Representative Dylan Roberts, he spoke to our group, and he said that he's working, or it has, I think, passed, changing the lodging tax to not only fund tourism, but municipalities can vote to allow it to also fund childcare and workforce housing. But it has to be voted on at a
So
local
that,
level.
and that directly impacts the city of Ray's, I think their excise tax, but I'm not positive. They may have to get that approved by the voters to be able to spend that.
I mean, this honestly, with the amount of information you've thrown at us and some of the discussions we had in our budgeting process last year, Preston, we may be due for a workshop on funding streams for affordable housing. I know we talked about looking at CB's vote last year and your raise. I think sometime we're due for a full discussion on some of those funding streams.
I agree.
You know, and maybe that might be a great time, you know, for you to come in and share some of your thoughts too.
Yeah, I'd love to. I get it from a homeownership coalition group who is in Denver, and they've got a bunch of lawyers that, you know, go to the Senate, go to the House, and like keep really up on these things. And then they basically just tell us on a monthly basis. So it's great. Cool.
Good on you, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so that takes us to item number 16, which is the annual appointment after each year's election of Mayor Pro Tem and review of council representation on commissions, committees, and boards. So that is a memo from Preston, and actually, why don't we do this? Why don't we take like a 5-minute break, shall we? Sure. Stretch your legs, let people go to the bathroom. We will reconvene at 7:45, 7 minutes. Rough.
So back at the first one, we're at 6:16.
That's cool. Yes, they've been working on that for a while.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's Fred Robinson.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh, and then that duplex that she brought up.
The other human habitat humanity one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also. I think it was a last meeting where planning commission where somebody talked about how that kind of stopped. And
Jack, there's been a turnover. The executive director moved on, and I'm not sure who the new executive director is, but they've got a strong board.
This guy's working. There's activity going on. That was in the bridge, yeah, so it was visiting. Especially after place the
I think Jack was just expressing concern of not having. He just was.
I think we just.
My take was that such a control towards and also the habitat model is to have the people who've been chosen to live in those units a lot of the work. Right. And I hope it is. Hopefully that's. Yeah.
Yes, world's largest flight storage. 12 foot.
There was one a while ago, maybe last summer when things calmed down, because it was for a while, but I've got on my list to try and reach out and see who the executive director is. No, because it, you know, we all know, you get to the end of the project, it's the program list is the worst. Because I could really use volunteer sources. I'd go in and, you know, install sockets or whatever, because it's fun, something like that. Yeah, we'll see what we can find out.
Yeah. So yeah, it's called. It's not that big.
You know, these are,
The Great Main Street. Literally got constantly set up traction. I tell you.
She has a whole very good report.
She's engaging.
Yesterday.
Cool. Check that out. So, yeah. For some communities, you have some. Stuff's actually. Sounds kind of like. That's perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
To hear how that's called, that's so interesting. Yeah.
yeah. That wasn't all.
She's on 7 years. Now just. In January. And during COVID. Well, so the last.
It's like they're talking before. Agendas. And then
so Dan, no rush.
No, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like adjustments you can never give it to her, so track down.
Seems like.
See how we.
Let's finish. We're almost done.
We're so close. Sorry, I just sat down right in the middle of y'all's conversation.
No, I haven't.
Hi, I'm back.
I want to remind the city and council members that you have mailboxes.
I just got mine.
You just got yours.
Oh.
I was like, I'm check my mailbox.
Oh, cool.
Yours is still labeled with the previous council.
My quarterly mailbox.
But there's that whole room by the cops office. The prints are in there, and there's cardboard mailboxes with it.
I checked my approximately
Once a quarter May.
Well, but we don't have the habit. We weren't
I
here
understand.
for It still feels weird to say I have like voted by acclamation.
That was really bizarre. The first time. How does this happen?
Those my council meetings have been like on Thursday, they're like on back and watch old ones. And
It's
then I
nice
was
to
like,
have recordings.
right. But it was always like the whole line item one. It's cool to hear just one out loud. I'm sure it looks bad. Oh my God. Right then. Excellent. Yeah. Mostly talking out loud to myself.
It's all good. None of that. Your pens.
Yeah, no, right.
Holy cow.
It's all German.
Good.
Well, let's see what Jared Paul says.
Thank you. Yeah. That's a.
That's honestly, that's probably the.
Nice work. It's really satisfying when they come out like that.
When you get the whole group
When
on.
you get the whole room. All right, good work, everyone. We're only a minute late. All right, we're back in session and I was mayor pro tem for many years before being mayor, and it's so funny because people don't understand what mayor pro tem is. It's a Latin term. It just means temporary mayor. When the mayor's not around, the mayor pro tem runs the meeting. And Russ has graciously served in that position for the last 2 years. Just a year. Oh, we do it every year. That's right. I'm happy to have Russ do it again. Is anybody else interested in the job? It's not like it's a big job.
I'm interested in having Russ do it again.
I fully support Russ. Did you just move to?
I move to Russ as mayor pro tem.
Seconded.
There's a second. Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we got that taken care of.
Thanks, Russ.
Sorry, Russ, we just like.
No worries.
Right on.
Yeah, he's a natural.
Great job.
He's a natural. All right, so then you see before you all the committees and commissions and boards and liaisons that we also have. There aren't that many vacancies that, and then Preston, you think by next meeting we'll have the paperwork to convert the parks, trails and open space to what we hopefully we'll be calling it the sustainability.
Yeah, I'll have, a resolution with some authority and procedures for you all to consider.
Okay.
Didn't I read somewhere, maybe it was in the report, that they may not want to do that?
Yeah, John clearly didn't
Oh,
do the report. I'm
Busted.
Just kidding.
Busted.
There's a typo in that.
What? No, another one?
I skimmed it, but I didn't see that. Because we only got that yesterday. I guess the first thing I usually throw out at this point is those of us who are still seated, continue to be on council and are in a position in one of these committees or commissions or boards. Is there anybody that would like to trade and maybe do something different or feel like you don't have the time to do what you've been doing?
I think JT would be an excellent member of the Snuffles Energy Board, which is a struggle for me with school to make.
Are you interested in
Did you see that I had it highlighted?
No, but it's
Did you
really a
highlight it?
struggle for me, and you'd be
that? I think that'd be
excellent at it.
awesome. I think
The other one I was considering, and I didn't know if there was a vacancy or not, was the Water Users Association.
have you been doing that?
That's
I have, but there's been very few meetings. Now, that one is actually it's a voting position with the water board.
Right.
Erie County Water.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to keep doing that?
Because of my land and water and land committee, I think that one kind of ties together pretty well and keeping up with what's going on with, especially with this Rams horn development.
Yeah, you've been in on all of it.
You've been in, okay. Yeah, and I'm very curious in that stuff, so I'd like to pick your brain on it.
Yeah, no worries. And if you want to be an alternate, I'd be happy to have you. So,
And are you talking on the water and land, or are you talking the Erie County waters as an alternate?
either one. If you were talking about the County Water Users Association, that'd be fine.
Preston, is that the formality of that group? Is that allowed for an alternate or?
That's a good question. I try to stay, as does Bo, on top of their meetings and what they're doing. Russ is right. They haven't been convening very regularly, and frankly, I think they had been leaving the town out of the conversation for a while. It's another story, but we're on that board. We have a vote on that board, but it's not really well defined to me how often they're gonna be meeting, and I don't think it's very regular.
So you attended one of the meetings that they had over at the 4-H. I remember seeing you there. It was a presentation on the reservoir. Done
That's
by
right.
Tri-Chem
That's right.
on the Ridgway Reservoir here. They've had one more meeting since then. I'm not real happy with the way that organization runs, but that's a whole nother story. They will call you up to have a meeting and go, well, we're talking about this, but they haven't shared the document with you sometimes. So, but it does get a little tricky because Marty Whitmire is involved in this Uray County Waters Association and
President, correct?
I believe that's correct, yeah. And you know, kind of an advisor with her water background. But there are some concerns about it. It all kind of ties in with this whole Ramsborn Reservoir thing. And so I do have some concerns with that whole thing. I would like to kind of stay involved in that. But we do have a seat at the table. We are voting members in that group. And
Kind of sounds to me like as an entity with a seat at the table for this group, it would make sense for us to maybe put a little pressure on for them to be a little more forthcoming and ask that they meet more regularly. Is that something that you could?
We can pose the question, reach out to Marty to better understand what
Is there a staff person or?
there is another gal who's actually kind of coordinating on behalf of that.
Secretary.
Yeah, she's not a staff person, but she she does like the coordinating, the wrangling, if you will.
Right.
You check in with them.
Is it an independent association? Is it a quasi governmental?
Bo, are you on? Do you mind talking to your?
It's a nonprofit. It's a 501c.
Okay. And members from entities in Uray.
So there's Ridgway has a seat, Uray County has a seat, City of Uray has a seat, and then the remaining, Uray County is a non-voting member, I believe.
That's
And
correct.
then the remaining members are appointed at large. Usually they are water users within the district, which is Uray County, to basically a little bit over the county line, because the Jutton property is kind of included as a component of the Water Users Association.
That's helpful, thanks. Well, I would just ask that between you, Preston, and you, Bo, in whatever fashion you deem appropriate, maybe reach out to that group and see if we can get a little more regular meeting schedule and provision of documents ahead of meetings and things like that. It seems like would help. Thanks. And sounds to me like JT has agreed to be the Snuffles Energy Board rep. Preston, your name is also on there.
Full disclosure, I attend those meetings routinely for my job.
Yeah.
I'm always there to.
Yeah, I think so. And we have good coverage. I try and make it when I can as an alternate. It seems like, Russ, I know you're retired, but you're filling a lot of roles here. Is there anything you'd like to? And again, like the Joint Planning Board doesn't meet very often, rarely. In the past, it's been more frequent when there was more. It's funny that there's very little growth pressure in the county while there's so much in town, but I think that's appropriate in a lot of ways. Councilor Beck, ex-Councilor Beck was the alternate on the Joint Planning Board, so we need somebody to be the alternate for that. And again, that's not a big commitment.
I could volunteer to be the alternate.
Okay. Gary down as the alternate for the Joint Planning Board.
And I'd let somebody handle the main one if they want on that. The non-alternate spot.
Okay.
again, it's, I've never attended one.
Never had a meeting since
No.
you've been on council.
I know they had one since I was in that position, but I didn't get invited.
Well, that happened. It's kind of something that as we step into those positions, we need to work with Preston and Pam to get those contacts, because Julie didn't know that I was very happy to be on the WE board. And so I am now on their email list.
Okay.
A little, some of that, I think, in some situations falls a little on us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Every year we redo these, and if we don't let the entity know that we've changed, they're not gonna know.
So the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee, in fact, not to preempt President's report, but it doesn't, it says here, as a reminder, staff has not located any documentation that the committee formally was established. The group does not have any bylaws in place. So is there a reason to appoint somebody to that?
So it's just, I'll talk to that. So met with, and I was totally kidding, sorry. Met with them a couple weeks ago to throw around the idea and get their input on the sustainability committee. They thought it was a great idea. Got some really solid input from Dave Jones and the crew there. Collectively, there was an interest in continuing the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee, you know, even if it is informally. So there's a commitment to continue meeting every other month, only if needed, of course. But you know, Terry, you know, thanks for reading that. It's informal. There's no bylaws in place, so you know, we still do minutes and stuff, but we're not really bound to do that based on the fact that there was no resolution, at least to my knowledge, no resolution to ever form the group. Again, no bylaws. So Angela Farrelly was the last appointee.
I would be interested in taking on a role in that organization.
Because I was interested in encouraging you to do that.
You're doing a great job of that tonight, Julie.
Preston, I get the impression from Dave Jones that the scope of, and still to be determined on the Sustainable Development Group, whatever it might be called, that might be beyond including parks and open space. They'd rather, am I correct in saying that? They'd rather just keep it as is than to make it a bigger umbrella?
Yeah, so just some more background. So propose the idea of doing away with the Parks Committee, evolving it to a Sustainability Committee, provided that some of them were interested in being on that committee, maybe not. It was interesting. It really evolved into just getting input on how kind of the scope of work or authority and procedures for a sustainability could look. So you know, I'll take that input and start shaping for, you know, standalone sustainability committee. The conversation then evolved into, well, you know, some of the aspects that the Parks Committee deals with, could we just throw some of that to the Sustainability Committee? And based on the examples that were provided on what comes before them, everyone kind of landed on, no, that doesn't fit. It just doesn't fit. So that was the motivation for, let's continue this group. Council's okay with it, and meet only if needed. I don't know if that makes any sense.
So stay status quo as Parks and Open Space, and if there's a sustainable committee, that we're back at kind of ground zero to figure out what that would look like.
Yeah, yes.
Fine by me. I mean, at the time that we first started batting around the idea of the Sustainable Development Committee, whatever you want to call it, it was that we maybe don't need yet another committee, but I'm fine either way. It's mostly a matter of if we can find the volunteers to fill these things out. And I can see where the members of the existing Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee felt like there was reason to keep that committee going, and it didn't necessarily perfectly jive with the idea of this new committee. So I'm open. I certainly don't have any big concerns either way.
I think if we're going to find citizen volunteers to be on any committee in Ridgway right now, sustainability might be the one we actually get people to want to be on.
I don't think we'll have any trouble finding.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be one we're gonna be able to fill.
Well, there is the informal zebra committee that may, pine to become that sustainable, at least the members of it, which are the same choir, same group of people. The zebra committee is the net zero initiative that we have, and I've been working with them on doing research and data collection in order to form recommendations to the council at some point. But that could morph, last meeting we had was that they would then serve to inform the sustainability committee, then present these ideas to the council. So whether there's a need that zebra committee to remain in existence or not, I'm not sure, but there's definitely a handful of people that would easily shift over to the sustainability committee, given the opportunity.
Okay.
I'll speak to the Sneffels Energy Board thing first. Yes, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
And then in terms of the sustainable development stuff, which I've had informal conversations and emails back and forth before getting elected with John and Preston, I'd be happy to go continue on a fact-finding mission and see what good comps are out there and what the scope of that group would be. And at least start to put some form to that. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And totally exclusive of parks and open space. Let that be status quo.
And I move that Polly take that position.
The parks and open space.
Okay.
Do you have anything else that?
I was thinking, what else can I assign down?
President, we don't actually formally need motions and seconds to appoint people to these.
No, I couldn't, I would say, so moved based on the conversation.
Terry's already made the motion. Somebody want a second?
I
Wait,
need
hold
to
up,
go
yeah.
through the whole thing again. I got really lost, you guys.
Okay.
All over the place. So
Terry,
if you're done, that's great. Can we recap?
yes, and all that really, I mean, there was a lot of discussion there, but the main thing that came out of it just now is that Terry made a motion to appoint Polly to the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee.
Do you want all of them
Yeah.
together, Pam, or do you want?
Can we just go through the list? And
Yeah,
then
sure.
You can make one
Yeah.
motion if you want to make a motion, but
That-
I just
that's
want to make sure I have everything.
So I'll do it. I have the list. JT will be the primary rep on the Sneffels Energy Board. Terry will be the alternate on the Joint Planning Board. And Polly will be the primary rep on the Parks, Trails and Open Space Committee.
All right.
And those are the only
And-
changes?
That's what I heard.
That's right. And just to be clear, Russ, just for the record, any way I can be involved on the water users and water and land, even just by discussion, formally, please keep me abreast.
Okay, yeah, we'll do.
Can we add to your list that JT could be the alternate to the Erie County Water Users Association, if that's appropriate?
Sure.
Oh, yep.
Formalize that, and then if the board is okay to having alternates, you could actually attend the meetings as the alternate, non-voting unless you can't attend. I imagine they're public meetings anyway. Yeah, so does that help? Yep. Make sense to you? Okay. You got all that, Pam?
I did.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to make the changes that Preston just noted.
I'm so moved.
That's all we, is there a second?
Second.
JT seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Got it. Nice work, everybody. That takes us to written and verbal reports that some of us didn't read completely. First off, item number 17 is a very interesting one. So Preston, an update regarding water service revenue for fiscal year 2021.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So hopefully you had a chance to put your eye to the memo. For most of you, it looks a lot like what was in the packet within March of last year. Purely for informational purposes, I think it provides a pretty good recap of how we got to this point with regard to the water rate structure. The aim the whole time, at least the commitment from council, has always been to balance costs across all water system users in an equitable way, considering the needs of both residential and commercial customers. So To recap, 2020 was the first full year since the rate structure went into effect. Quite remarkable, actually. The town exceeded the service revenue goal in fiscal year 2020 by 0.39%, estimated just shy of $3,000. That's remarkable.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and in 2021, not that close, but not too far off. I still think quite remarkable. So the second full year since that water rate structure had been in place, the town fell short of the service revenue goal by about 3.75%, I think is what it amounts to. Just shy of $27,000. Again, in my eyes, still pretty close. So just wanted to paint a picture for you all, kind of report on that, considering it was a hot topic back in 2018.
So just for a reminder, we were setting this money aside, and I think it shows here into 2021, we're projecting having $1 million, 60,000 in there, 61,000 roughly. And as I recall, this was so that we could upgrade our infrastructure where needed, upgrade the plant, the water processing plant, maybe potentially any pipelines or anything like that. What was our end goal and what we were trying to reach with those revenues? Did we have a stated goal there?
Like specific projects to accomplish, like upgrades and stuff. Off the cuff, I wasn't present for those conversations. I'm sure there were plenty of ideas thrown around on how that money could be devoted, and infrastructure upgraded, water plants addressed, water plant and wastewater treatment plant. Both plants addressed accordingly. Joanne might be able to, Joanne's still on. I don't know if she's paying attention. She might be able to talk to that a little bit, given that she was around then. Joanne, are you there?
Yep. There were a whole list of projects that Jen had set aside of reasons to be setting aside funds. The idea was to be able to have enough money to be able to match and hopefully, leverage grants in order to be able to pay for some of the things. The water plant needs upgraded. There's work to be done on the ditch. We did do the project to upgrade the diversion. I'm trying to, at some point we needed another river crossing and more storage on the other side of the highway. There's a whole host of things that we had put together a list, and just the object was to have enough reserves that as these projects came up, we had funds to be able to leverage.
And if I remember correctly, at the time we initially made the water change, we weren't covering the cost of production of the water.
Correct.
So we were eating into tap fees, which should be being used for system expansion and infrastructure upgrades. That's the purpose. Additional users buying in, they should be helping to pay their way. And so the idea was that we would then revisit this on a regular basis instead of shocking our community with a huge rate increase. Like a lot of these scenarios go from a $42 base rate to a $62 base rate, which is an almost 40% increase. But hopefully we'd be looking at something like, should it go from 42 to 47, where it's not just crippling to people's budgets.
And just to piggyback on what Joanne was saying, many of the projects she's talking about are memorialized in either the 5-year, 10-year capital project list. Some of them happening or slated to happen this year. And that's subject to council direction each budget cycle. So just to be clear there. So if you go into the town budget, check out that 5 or 10-year plan, there's a lot of those projects on there.
And I think it was during the budget, or sometime I was like, we really need to revisit these because we did hit them spot on the first full year after we passed them. And last year we're slightly under where where our stated goal was. And I would just look at something where, again, if we have to raise our rates on our residents,
that we would do it in some small, easily absorbed way on a regular basis, rather than every 10 years, increase it drastically.
Do want to mention something. I didn't put it in the memo. First, I want to shout out Chase Jones, who helped do the data evaluation for this report. So, Joanne and I do this. So thank you, Chase.
Former town employee who you hired on a contractual basis to help you.
Yeah, to help, periodically with stuff.
Perfect.
He's great.
He had the background, the history.
And just so you know, JT and Polly, Joanne is the town's contracted engineer. So
Thank you.
just throwing all these people names at you. Sorry about that. But yeah, Joanne's been with the town a long time.
Longer than me. Or maybe just about the same.
But the one thing I wanted to say about 2020 and 2021, do want to be careful because there's usage variables that we need to take into account that we just don't know. Something that I don't really talk with Joanne about it too much, but Jason and I have chatted a little bit about it. 2020 was dominated by COVID. People were at home a lot more, I think, and probably using more water. Nothing to substantiate that, but probably 2021 still dealing with it, but not at the level 2020 was, right? So, maybe that.
These numbers in your last chart on the last page, bear that out.
So anyway.
But that would be,
And I was just gonna throw out, the water study that we just had done and had a meeting about it a couple months ago. A bunch of the takeaways from that were that we need to make some investments in better data collection. We've always talked about trying to figure out how to pipe the ditch from the head gate to the go. I think we need to make sure we don't just put that report on the shelf and not revisit it at least yearly, if not more, and try and accomplish some of those things, especially now that there's so much funding out there for, I don't know whether, again, the ARPA money is great. It's not a huge chunk of change, but maybe we could use it to leverage a larger grant with somebody. I think I saw something come through my mailbox recently from the state about funding specific to water and sewer projects that I don't remember who it was, but it was DOLA or some, maybe even been CDPHE. But I just think it's really important that we keep our eyes on the prize there and we get some of these things done. So obviously.
I think our current scenario is hitting the mark in terms of you get some amount of water at what comes out to the per gallon base rate up to a point. And then, we're asking our users to at least think about or financially compensate for their heavy water usage. I think we were spot on that. My kind of question is, if I'm perpetually coming in under 6,000 gallons, am I paying my share at $42?
I'd chime in and say absolutely paying attention to that report, looking at its strengths and potential weaknesses as well, concurrent with all the other federal monies that are coming down the pike, and even acknowledgement from the state that there's going to be need for that in every single community on the western slope to some effect. And I know that the landscaping regs were updated. Was that 2018?
No.
So last year, no. And even figuring out ways to both pay attention, constantly pay attention to that and even figure out other ways to incentivize, not just financial. There's even been the pull up your lawn, pull up your grass incentives from the state level that have come across the radar. And I don't think that's a huge amount of money, but I think that the momentum behind it might force that budget to rise.
Yeah, I was just saying, and on the opposite end of that is, as people move to that for various incentives, our water usage is going to drop, which is going to drop our revenues, which is going to affect those funds that we have on hand for the various projects. Makes water that weird thing where, yes, please conserve water, but then that hits our our bottom line, which is one of the questions about raising a base rate. You know, we already kind of have that structure that you're gonna pay more as you move up. But at some level, the base costs of operating our system have to get spread across.
And until I saw this, I hadn't realized that give and take. As I was going through the scenarios.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this item? To be continued, right? All right, that takes us to the town manager's report. I always give Preston an opportunity to highlight anything specific. Hopefully the rest of you did a better job of reading it than I did, obviously. But
You gotta have fun, right?
absolutely.
I'll just highlight a couple things. The Ridgway Space to Create in-person info session was last Thursday and went pretty well. I think it was well attended for sure. How many people were there? Kevin and John were there. What, 30 some? 40 some?
Yeah, I would say at least 30.
Yeah, so
Just judging from your picture, it looks like they might have been 40.
I forgot to send a picture. Greg Foley with Art Space and Lindsay, I'm forgetting Lindsay's last name, with the property management company that Art Space is contracted with, were represented and answered a bunch of questions. So at this point, applications are due to become available later this month, and then we'll be due in early May. And we'll be doing a lot of communication here in the next couple of weeks when those timelines are available.
Was there any sense of there being more people applying than there would be openings? Did you get any feel for that?
My general vibe is there's going to be a lot of interest and hundreds of applications, but you know, that's just a guess. I don't know. What do you think, John?
Well, the only thing I throw out is that there was a surprising amount of disappointment in the room when the AMI numbers that were granted from last year, but when they were named, which was 45, something like that. Maybe that was the 80% of the AMI was around 40.
I think it was like 44 and change.
44 or something. And it became apparent right away that with the at least the Ridgway School District passing their bond issue last fall to increase teacher salaries, that the majority of the teachers were going to be priced out of this project, and then only the most entry level, starting salary teachers might qualify. I mean, I ended up at the end of the presentation, there was a lot of people who left, but people who were there were still really trying to kind of figure it out. I had to say to them that this really is a low-income housing project. It's not the missing middle, and that's a whole other piece that I liked hearing Andrea mention. I mean, the workforce housing challenges that we face are really multifaceted, and it's a giant puzzle with a lot of different puzzle pieces. And this is just one part of the puzzle. That said, I definitely think that there will be plenty of applicants and we won't have any trouble. There will definitely be a waiting list. But it was really clear through the presentation that the art space model is, for obvious reasons with art space's name, it's designed to help sort of the stereotypical starting artist have a place to live and do their work. And it's
Not the same objective as the Telluride Foundation, but the Yellow Brick Lane, which I think have higher.
well, and those are for sale.
Yeah, right.
So
But I mean, the AMI levels, I think, are higher, or
can't remember if they're higher.
percentages go over 100%.
They're higher.
Yeah, I think they go all the way up to 120%.
That's right.
But, and I think the most current AMI numbers just came out. That gal Lindsay said that she expected to get them either Thursday or Friday last week, and she hadn't gotten them by the time of the meeting. So, and they typically will go up, so that will help some. But
If I could just piggyback, another reason I think there'll be a lot based on Art Space's listserv, folks who have just signed up to be notified. I think it's substantial. I don't try to give you a number of what it was. I think it was over 100, and then we have our own listserv folks who have said, please keep us in the loop. So Tara has that. There's a lot of names. So.
There were a lot of familiar faces in the group at that meeting, and I heard a lot of feedback after it. And I found it interesting that, you know, neighbors that we see all the time who've worked 2-3 jobs to live in the area, all of a sudden discovered on last year's taxes that they made too much. And that was,
It's that ironic thing, the cost of living here has gotten to the point where you have to work 2 or 3 jobs to be able to afford to live here, and then that bumps you over the.
yeah, and then the opportunity presents itself.
And I think the thing to keep in perspective though, so, I mean, I just found Chapa's numbers for AMI, for a good percentage of teachers are still gonna qualify. That's, they're saying 100% is 55K. And so that means as an 8th year teacher with a master's degree and an additional 30 credits, I'm not there yet. So, you know, when we think about trying to attract people who are young and excited about being here, we're still going to capture a chunk. It's not going to be everybody, but it's going to be a chunk.
And the max for the arts-based project is 80%.
That puts you at 44, which includes, it's almost phased out of Ridgway because they're shooting for base 40, but it's going to catch all of that.
Right.
And is that for a single,
That's
a single person? If are the double unit, or the 2-bedroom units?
80% for 2 people would be 50,700 in 2021.
Thank you.
There's a packet of information by the door when you head out from that meeting. And it's like 12 pages. It's got all the neat stuff in
I
it.
would like to.
Just as you talk to people, so information.
Is that available digitally yet?
I made a PDF on my phone. I can
She's
shoot text.
It should be on the website or.
Well, I'll check. Yeah, Greg was going to send us the PDF version so we could get it on the website.
I mean, it will certainly fill, it has a need, and it will most certainly work. It was just an interesting mix in that room, much like the AMI discussion from a few months ago. We kind of all felt that.
Well, you have to remember, not all school employees are teachers, and not all school employees are hitting that either. So, yeah.
Well said.
Just a couple more things to highlight. The Adopt a Highway cleanup.
Yeah.
Your Adopt a Highway cleanup council is on April 23rd. That is Saturday.
2 Saturdays.
Yeah.
10
to noon.
I'm gonna miss that.
It's gonna be fun, Terry.
I want to be there, but I'm gonna be camping in Utah. So I'll pick up some furniture.
Throw something at you when you drive by.
I already RSPD'd as well.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be camping in Chicago.
Yeah, no worries. We'll fine. And,
So what's the frequency of the cleanup days? It's quarterly?
Yeah.
well, the agreement says, yeah, we have to do it at least twice a year, but quarterly, well, it says 2 to 4 times a year. So twice a year, but quarterly, I think would be a good aim. So I'll send you all some more information logistically for that day. Never done this before, so I don't know.
It's my first too. It's gonna be
We're
great.
gonna park, like what the mile marker and stuff.
I did watch the.
It's gonna be great. I'll bring treats.
Yeah.
It's not funny, I'm serious. The cleanup event, that annual cleanup event will be the following Saturday in the parking lot behind the library. Study if there was.
No electronics again this year?
No
They're
electronics.
doing a separate one. Ashley is now director of the chamber, but used to work at the bank, said that she'd heard from somebody at the bank they were going to do it.
They will.
They are going to.
Separate and by itself.
So they advertise it.
Yeah.
What's that? Let's hope they advertise it. Yeah.
They didn't really last year. It was like days notice. It's happening.
I'll try to reach out to them.
Is there a shred day? Yeah.
They haven't done the shred day in a while, I don't
They
think.
usually do that like, yeah, they did the last couple of years.
Yeah.
They usually do it in April and early May, I think, here in Montrose.
We got to bug them.
So shout out to Pam for coordinating the event, and then shout out to Mayor Clark, Stephen Schroeder. We'll have I'm planning to be there, and then Rodney, our mosquito guy, will be there helping on the 30th. So we'll have some more help this year. The water meter replacement program, you all, or most of you will remember, we're in the second year of that replacement program. The bummer thing is Randy is having such a hard time finding parts right now, just given supply chain issues. So we're talking for this year's days, 200 water meters and MXUs being replaced around town, which is great. But again, not quite sure when to expect the arrival of those and when they'll go in. Just for your information, this time last year, all 150 were already installed by mid-April. So that would have been what we wanted to achieve, be done with that 200 by now. I'll keep you all posted. The solar array on the athletic park restrooms, Deb is actually soliciting quotes from companies to do that. Hopefully we get the quotes we're looking for in the next couple of days, and we can move forward with a 2.66 kilowatt PV system on top of the athletic park restrooms. So, fairly small array, but
It's basically, and that size was based on fitting the west facing roof of the bathroom. So that's a relative number.
yeah,
Depends upon,
Sort of like 3 or 4 panels.
no, it would be more than that. Say, probably like 8 to 10. So it changes because of the size and the wattage of the panels changes.
And then Jim Duncan was the selected candidate for the full-time deputy position. He's transitioned from, or will transition from part-time to full-time May 1st, I think. May 7th. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Kind of tired of talking.
I want to thank Shane and Elaine came in and talked to my health class about victim advocacy services in Uray County, and the minute you walked out the door, they had 10,000 questions. But you know, that's because they'll ask them a week. But thank you so much. It was really appreciated.
That's great. That's exactly what I was hoping you guys would start doing. So
Shane, I think you and all your guys need a big thank you, just.
in general.
In general.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They gave us some same presentation to the youth council last one too. So, speaking of youth council, these are their suggestion boxes that they worked with Adam Johnson, the shop teacher, in producing. And so, just hot off the press, we will get one. Yeah, we'll get one station here at Town Hall, and then they took the other one to put up by the opposite secondary school, and they need to craft the messaging on what they're really intended for, but they really want to get notes from their peers and members of the public on what's important to them, issues that they're seeing, questions that they can relatively late in their term. Their last meeting is next month, but that perhaps future youth councils can sift through this and start addressing. So cool idea, I think, and they're pretty excited about it.
Handwritten comment is way better than something online, so, yeah. I think that's great.
The first not nice one we get, I'm sending to you.
I'm excited about the speed location, finally getting the portable speed bumps.
That's exciting.
And I guess we plan is to put at least one on Amelia and decide where to put the other one.
Yeah, we purchased 2. Well, when Mike Jenkins gets back from vacation, hopefully the speed bumps have arrived and we can go pinpoint the exact location on Amelia for that one. Like you said, just evaluate.
I'm thinking we're gonna want to buy more.
Yeah, I'm thinking when Yellow Brick Lane comes in, Laura Street may be excited about one.
Absolutely, because
That's gonna change.
Laura's gonna go all the way through in these days.
Yeah.
It's gonna change Laura's.
You may have to recuse yourself from the speed bump.
Oh, it's not gonna be just me. I might have to recuse myself, but I'm not gonna be the only one.
Alfred Street, a couple of them.
At least one right in front of my house. Actually, I don't think you want it right in front of your house because that's where they curse and.
Oh, that's what, no, I want it. I'm gonna sit there
That's
and
where they
laugh.
throw the McDonald's.
Need more cleanup. Now, let's see, anything else? I mean, Interestingly, you got Stephen to contribute the joke this month.
I didn't ask.
I gotta say, I was not a fan.
That wasn't my favorite
Space
joke.
jokes?
No, it wasn't working for me. We rate the jokes every month.
I liked it.
I thought it was funny.
I'll tell.
I feel like you're gonna be a soft touch on the jokes.
I am a dad joke fan. I love dad jokes.
Bo, she's here for you.
Bo,
What do you got for us
Gotcha.
tonight, Bo?
You guys want to joke tonight?
Yeah, let's hear it, Bo.
What do vegetarian zombies eat? Grains.
I missed it.
Say that again.
Did you say brains?
You said grains.
That is beyond stupid.
We have Polly on one end of the spectrum and Pam on the other.
Oh, I like it. Okay,
thank you,
well,
Bo.
anything else? What else we got? Anything else on the agenda? I don't think so. Oh, we have an
Just our
executive session.
Well, and we talked about the committee stuff. Is this where we go?
Oh, yeah, right. Committee reports. Thank you.
So the Uncompahgre with the Water and Land Commission, Uncompahgre Valley Water Users Association is seeking a grant, and they requested a letter of support from the town. And they're also requesting stakeholders to be involved in the process down the road. So. Yes.
So, yeah, so they're seeking a grant to put together a drought contingency plan. And so that, falls in line with, everything in our master plan and all our efforts and everything collectively the town council believes in. So, I issued a letter of support for that funding application. I think it was last week, right?
They wanted it by the 10th, I think.
Yeah, so I went ahead and put my name to it and sent it over to Steve Pope, and they got it in their application, I'm imagining. The secondary piece to that is they're gonna be wondering if, and I think this is gonna come at a later time with much more information based on what I gathered from Steve, but they wanna know what jurisdictions wanna participate in that drought contingency planning effort. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, but that's what I gathered. And so, I would suspect there'd be support for the town to devote some time and energy to participating in that. Not quite sure what it'll look like. But I think Russ wanted to bring it up because it's going to take time and energy from someone to attend meetings and keep everyone abreast of what the conversation is, just participate in general. So, I mean, to steal your thunder, what was that?
It was good. Well done. Thanks.
Just to piggyback on the discussion, Tara's done an amazing job with the Creative Main Street group. And I think there's some cool energy coming out of that. There's going to be some neat stuff coming down the pipeline. So everybody would be kind of informed on stuff that's happening. And it's great for creatives, for businesses alike, and there's good energy in the group and it's got good traction.
I agree. Tara's just killing it. She's doing a great job.
Yeah.
Anybody else have community report, anything like that?
And for JT and Polly, Tara is our community initiatives facilitator. I know you know Tara, but do you know Tara, Polly?
I saw her on one of the last meetings when she was introduced. Isn't she like brand new, or did I just make that?
And she started in January.
Okay.
You guys can tell me to stop talking. I just want to make sure you know.
No, that's good.
I appreciate that, all of it.
She's got a great skill set.
And she and her husband own the Simone Coffee.
Oh, cool, thank you. Love additional context.
Yes, context is
I
good.
love getting the whole picture.
Anything else on community reports or anything before we do this executive session? None. Probably need that citation again and then a motion to go into executive session. Oh, you want to give us that?
Happy to, Mayor. if we could get a motion to go into executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding the paving of Lenna Street and the implementation agreement with Lenna Street Commons LLC.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Bye. Bye.
Have a good night.
You too. Thanks. How we doing on Zoom?
There's still Miss Dana Ivers.
Justin.
Oh, that's Joanne. Joanne needs to stay.
Dana, we're about to go into executive session, so we need to hop off if you don't mind. You're still there? This happened last month. She probably left her phone on and didn't.
There she goes.
Thank you. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we have two brand new members. You might want to give a little bit more explanation tonight about executive sessions in general.
Yeah, welcome JT, welcome Polly. Congratulations on your guys' election. Really look forward to working with you. I'm hopeful that Preston and I will schedule a training. I know that you guys got your council welcoming packet and you're probably fully briefed on the rules of procedure already, but just to highlight, there are certain areas that can be a closed door discussion, executive session. That's where we just read the citation. So the limitations are legal advice, matters that might be subject to negotiation, certain personnel matters, potential purchase of property, or if it involves any sort of criminal matters that would need to be confidential under state law. And so what we're going to do is we'll read a little script, stay on the kind of focused area of the executive session. Then the topic kind of needs to stay within those boundaries. If you feel like we're going out those boundaries, or if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Again, the information contained in the executive session is confidential until it's not. We retain any sort of information for 90 days, after which time the tape will be destroyed. Or in the alternative, if for whatever reason the board wanted to release the information in the executive session, they could do that with the full majority. Lastly, we can't do any specific actions items in the executive session. Occasionally, we'll have an agenda item at the end where we come out of the executive session after getting the requisite legal advice or discussing terms, and then maybe have an action item. But that's not the incident for tonight. So any questions before we jump in? All right, great. Well, we'll go ahead and go through the process, and thanks again. And I think you guys will follow up with some training. I think we'll have some SURSA training. We'll have some training from my office, and obviously Preston's available to answer any questions you might have in the interim. So.
Thanks, Paul.
All right. So if we're good, Mayor, we'll go ahead and proceed. This is an executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for the purpose of receiving legal advice with respect to the paving of Lenna Street and the implementation agreement with Lenna Street Commons LLC. I caution each participant to confine the discussion to the stated purpose of the executive session. It is April 13th and the time is 8:40 p.m. This executive session is being electronically recorded. Also present at this executive session are the following persons. Preston, if you could do the roll call, please.
Yeah, Kevin Grandley, Polly Enix, Russ Meyer, John Clark, JT Thomas, Beth Lakin, Terry Schuyler, Joanne Fagan, and myself, Preston Neal.
And myself, Bo Nerlin, as the town attorney. As the town attorney, it's my opinion that discussion of the matter announced in the motion to go into executive session constitutes a privileged attorney-client communication. Therefore, I'm recommending that no recording be kept of the executive session. It is Wednesday, April 23rd. The time is 9:20. We will conclude the
April
executive.
13th. Sorry,
What do you say?
April, he said 23rd, it's April 13th.
Yeah, excuse me. April 13th, 2022, 9:20, we will conclude the executive session and return to the open meeting. As the attorney for the town of Ridgway, having concluded the executive session, to the extent that any council member feels that we went outside the property.
Last year again.
Last year again.
Can you guys hear me?
I think it's something on the town's end, because I can continually hear Bo.
Yeah, you guys got to get your Wi-Fi fixed.
We can hear you now. What's the matter with our Wi-Fi? Go
If
ahead.
any council member feels that we went outside the scope of the executive session, please make an objection on the record. Hearing none, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thanks, Bo. Since we're concluded of all our other regular business, unless there's an objection, I will declare us adjourned.
Great meeting, guys.
Thanks, yeah. That's good.
Good night. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Bo.
Good night. See you, Joanne.
So we were asked Clean Networks to check out the Wi-Fi, because based on what we talked about earlier today, that we're